So welcome to our second in-person meeting of the Commission's meeting of 2022. We are so glad to see so many people here today addressing these very, very important issues affecting the most vulnerable amongst us. So thank you all, committed professionals. We couldn't do it without you. We know how much time you put into it. We know how important it is to you as it is to us. I know that Justice Huddle and I, on behalf of the court, hope that you know how very, very important these cases are to all 9 of us. It is something that we take very, very seriously, and we'll do everything we can as a body to continue this important work that will benefit, again, the most vulnerable amongst us. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your time, your energy, your effort. It's very, very valuable. And Justice Huddle and I thank you all. September is a busy time for everyone, and we know that. So we are grateful that you not only care about this so much, but that you take time out of your very, very busy days to be here to engage in this very important work. Please know that the meeting is being live streamed on the Commission's YouTube, Zoom. Yes. So it's actually not being live streamed on the YouTube channel right now due to some technical difficulties, but it is being conducted by Zoom. And of course, anybody who is interested in participating is able to do that through that technology. The meeting will be archived on the Children's Commission's website for the general public to access at any time. This is the time of the year where the state and federal fiscal years start. And the previous ones come to a close. So we have a lot of business to attend to today and many important updates to share with all of you. And I know that we're going to have another great discussion, as we have certainly ever since Justice Huddle and I have been involved, and I know well before that as well. I would like to invite the wonderful Justice Rebecca Huddle, our Deputy Chair, to share her remarks.
Good morning. I'm so glad you're here on a beautiful September Friday. It demonstrates your commitment that you all would give your day to this, and I'm so very grateful. I'd like to welcome the commissioners, the committee, the collaborative council. At our earlier in-person meeting this year, we couldn't accommodate everyone in the room we were able to secure, and so we're really delighted that everyone could be here with us today. Welcome. One of the things that makes the Commission's work meaningful and fruitful and impactful is the collaboration that happens here across the system, serving children and families. And we couldn't do that without you. So thanks to everyone in the room for making space in your day, in your life for this important work. I'll give it back to Justice Lehrman. Before that, though, I'll make one housekeeping announcement, and that is to say that we don't have mics on our table today. The mics are overhead in these green X's. They are quite sensitive. So if you could avoid sort of, tapping your fingers or rustling papers, the mics are quite sensitive, I'm told. Justice Lehrman.
Thank you, Justice Huddle. So just a few housekeeping matters that I'd like to share with you at the outset. So we are going to break for lunch at 12:15, and otherwise we'll not be taking any breaks. But of course, if you feel that you need to take a break or need to step out, please feel free to do so. Also know that we do have coffee and water, and of course you're welcome to access that as you would like to. This meeting, again, is being recorded, as Justice Huddle said, and we're told that it's very sensitive. So even apparently the slightest little, that kind of thing will interrupt and will be recorded on the mic. So be careful about that. Please fill out your match forms. They're printed and placed at your seats. This is required by the Federal Court Improvement Program grant. So please don't forget to do that. It is an essential thing that we have to make sure that everybody does. Allowable travel expenses can be reimbursed by our commission. There are printed forms reimbursement forms available for that purposes, or you can access the forms on our website after the meeting. Today's meeting notebook and the reports that will be discussed by staff are at your seats. A few additional printed copies are available for attendees, and all of these documents are also easily available on our website. Thank you for helping us again make this meeting as seamless as possible and as productive as possible. We have a few commission membership changes. I invite you to look at tab 1. That is page 9 in the PDF. And this is tab 1 in the meeting notebook that was distributed in advance of the meeting. This document includes commission, committee, and collaborative council memberships, as well as staff. And a few of the changes I would like to highlight. First, we have changes to announce regarding 2 of our standing positions. So Ms. Deneen Dryden has taken a new position at DFPS as the Director of Placement Stability. And so Ms. Erica Banuelos, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, is now the Associate Commissioner for Child Protective Services. Ms. Banuelos here, please stand, yes, so we can welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. She previously served as CPS Director at Field and Region Director in the San Antonio area. She's been with the agency since 1997. And so, of course, we know we're in very good hands because clearly she knows what she's doing and she knows what to contribute. And we are very, very fortunate to have her. Thank you and welcome. Thank you. The other standing position is the Child Protection Law Section Chair, which transitions every year in June. As a result, Judge Rhonda Hunter has rolled off the Children's Commission, and Sandra Hashem joins us today. She is with the Houston's County Attorney's Office and prosecutes CPS cases. Ms. Hashem. Thank you. I do want to very, very heartfully thank Judge Hunter for her service and share a wholehearted welcome to Sandra and to just comment on the wonderful work that Judge Hunter did, not only on this commission, but as she has done in her service in the Dallas court and for years before that. She's made so many contributions. I worked with Judge Hunter many years ago on different parts of legislation having to do with child representation. So she's been a very committed, hardworking member of the judiciary and a member of the bar for so many years. And so I want to really give her our heartfelt thanks. We also have had a change to one of our ex officio appointments from the governor's office. We're now joined by Ms. Madeline Fletcher, who serves as the Budget and Policy Advisor at the governor's office. Ms. Fletcher replaces Heather Fleming on the commission. Ms. Fletcher, please. I also want to announce that Anne Hellingenstein, and I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly, she has taken a temporary appointment as Executive Deputy Commissioner of DFPS through the duration of the legislative session. She will remain on the Children's Commission since it is a temporary change, but in the interim, Tamala Griffin will represent Casey Family Programs as her proxy. Ms. Griffin. She most recently served as Chief Financial Officer for the department and brings a wealth of experience to the role as the strategic consultant for Casey Family Programs. We look forward to working with you and thank you so much for being here. And now I would like to turn it over to Justice Huddle.
We're going to recognize a few more new members and new people in the room, and bear with us as we do that. I mean, one of the most valuable things about these meetings is knowing and understanding who is in the room. And that's really one of the powerful things we think about the commission, is just convening different stakeholders. So I'm pleased to introduce a few new folks to the group. Sophie Phillips is no longer at Text Protects, and she's rolled off the Systems Improvement Committee. Brenda, we're appreciative of her contributions. Brenda Hinsler is a DFPS managing attorney for regions, give us a wave, for DFPS regions 4, 5, and 7. And she brings great expertise to the legal practice and process committee. So welcome, we're glad to have you. Ann Palmer is no longer at Texas CASA. Margaret Halpin is an instructional designer and facilitation coach, and she will not now represent Texas CASA on the training committee. Sherry Beth Niehaus also joins the training committee in her capacity as DFPS disproportionality manager. Regarding the data committee, Dr. Jiangmin Kim from Texas State is rolling off the group. And Nathan Izell will replace Ross Baxter from DFPS on the data committee. Mr. Izell is the Deputy Director for Data and Decision Support for DFPS. So join me in thanking each of these individuals for their past service, and we look forward to new members and your contributions to come. Then there are a few collaborative council member changes to announce today. While Ms. Hashem, who we've just seen on this end of the room and serves on the Children's Commission, she'll no longer serve on the Collaborative Council. So we're optimistic that we can continue to work with her long after her term as CPL chair ends. Dr. Tracy Levins retired from UT and will be rolling off the Collaborative Council. We're thankful for her many years of partnership and service to children and families in Texas. Later in the agenda, we'll hear from other Collaborative Council members who would like to provide a brief update to the Commission today. We're planning for that at about 1:45. Collaborative Council members, may I remind you to please fill out a yellow card, just like these are sheets, not really cards, and deliver them to Children's Commission staff during the lunch break, if you'd like to. Now, I want to recognize a few guests who are with us today. Jamie Masters, the DFPS Commissioner, welcome. Thank you for being here.
You.
Judge Angela Graves Harrington. Harrington is the presiding judge of the 246th Family Court in Houston and a member of the Children's Commission Training Committee. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So thanks to each of you for your involvement and investment in the Children's Commission and in Texas children and families. Now on to a piece of business from the May 2022 meeting. The minutes from the May 13th meeting are behind tab 2 in your notebooks, and these were distributed in advance of the meeting as well. Everyone hopefully has had an opportunity to review them, and we're going to assemble votes verbally. First, before we move to votes, are there any corrections to the May 2022 meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt the minutes from the May 2022 virtual meeting?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you, Justice Lerman.
Thank you, Justice Settle. So as I mentioned earlier, this is an exciting time of the year because this is when we have a chance to hear about all the plans for the coming fiscal year. And we have a lot of plans indeed. You may recall that at the last meeting, we discussed some future projects and your feedback was invaluable to us. We really do go through all of the suggestions. As you remember, we kind of focused in on 2 specific things that we really thought were very important. Because of that, of course, we had the joint meeting with the Mental Health Commission, and that was very good. I think that's really going to result in some really positive things. Collaborating with that very, very important commission, because certainly a lot of the things that we are dealing with overlap with the very, very tragic and important issues that they're dealing with. So that was very, very important. And we also really did highlight this idea about working in the future to have families where there has been termination, but yet to continue that relationship between the families if in fact they're agreeable to it. Course. And I think a very good initiative also that we're looking at. So know that we really do listen. We really do analyze very deliberatively what we've done at these meetings to try to come up with specific things that we can really focus on that will help us help, again, these people, these children who are in these very tragic situations. To get up to speed about the work we've done, please reference the commission report behind tab 3. And this is page 24 in the PDF. And this includes comprehensive details on the progress for each of the Children Commission projects. I think that's it for now. I do want to apologize in advance. I am going to have to leave just a little bit early today. I have another important project that I have to deal with that has to do with the court. So I certainly am not leaving because I'm in any way not completely invested, involved, and very, very committed to the commission. So please excuse me in advance. Jamie.
Hi, everybody. For those who do not know me out there on the internet, I'm Jamie Bernstein. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Commission, and I have the privileged task of guiding you all through our fiscal year 2023 strategies and budget, along with our exceptional Children's Commission staff here. I do want to say, before jumping into that, as kind of a point of privilege, I just want to thank Justice Lerman and Justice Huddle. This is our anniversary of 1 year together, and it's been a great year. You have brought so much focus and commitment and passion to this work, and I've been inspired by your leadership, and I look forward to many, many good years to come. I also want to echo the sentiments that our chair shared earlier about the collaboration. We are nothing without all of you. The Children's Commission is built on collaboration with our partners. We don't know everything about everything. We rely on experts in so many areas of the state and so many areas of knowledge. And we depend on you greatly, and you always show up when we ask you to. So thank you on behalf of the entire staff for everything you do for us. And I also want to say thank you to our team who works tirelessly each and every day and puts in their highest and best effort. And I'm so very appreciative. I'm really proud of what we've accomplished in the last fiscal year, but we're not going to focus on that today because we don't have a lot of time. If you want to look at the activities from May to now, that is in the commission report, as Justice Lerman just noted. So we're ready to hit the ground running. And I want to share that in May, we asked you all for some feedback about our new strategies. We haven't changed our strategic plan. Some of the actual strategies within it have changed a little bit, and you'll see asterisks near new strategies, but those are the ones that we talked to you all about in May. We took them back, we incorporated them into our amended strategic plan, and we submitted that to the Administration for Children and Families in June. And we're really excited. This is the stuff we get fired up about. This is the Super Bowl for us to talk about our plans for the next year. And I'll say they're ambitious, but we're really looking forward to it. And I would ask you all, if you don't mind, to hold your questions and feedback for the end. We're going to go through all of the strategies that we're suggesting, and then we'll have time for discussion, and at the end, put it up for a vote on the strategies and budget. So these are the 5 goals, the real backbone of the Children's Commission work. As I mentioned, first and foremost, collaboration. We want to be good fiscal agents of the money that we're given by the federal government to improve courts and the child welfare system. And we do that through a collaborative spirit. The next 4 strategies really hearken to our 4 standing committees, and each of the staff who work on those committees will provide those updates. This is how we structure the work. This is probably pretty hard to see, but it is available, and we've printed copies for you all, and it's also on our website. So this is just a high-level chart that shows all the strategies and projects that live underneath those 4 standing committees. as well as all of those members. And some of them are in the room today. An extra thank you to you all, because you really are the engine that makes this stuff work and help us create all these great deliverables to inform the field. So here we go, proposed strategies for fiscal year 2023. This is just a repetition of that first goal of collaboration. And we have 5 strategies that fall under it. So the first one we're doing today, meeting with the Children's Commission. We provide quarterly updates to you all. Last year and in this coming year, we're going to do 2 in-person and 2 virtual. So we'll stick with the February, September in-person format and the May, November virtual meetings. Each meeting will have a general focus area. For February, we try to do special presentations, areas of focus, and that launched a lot of great work for us for the rest of the fiscal year when we did it last year. May, we're going to do brainstorming and planning for the next fiscal year. September, we'll present you with our strategies and budget. In November, we're going to do our member welcome and thank you to our exiting Children's Commission members. The committees, those 4 standing committees that I told you about, all meet on a quarterly basis as well. And we hope to do at least 1 in-person standing committee meeting per year, and the rest will likely be conducted virtually just for efficiency and participation purposes. The second strategy here is our beloved Collaborative Council. You're our eyes and ears and have so much depth of expertise on so many issues. We engage with our Collaborative Council through several ways. We provide a forum on a biweekly call for dialogue with the department, OCA, and our entire Collaborative Council is welcome to join every other week. And it's a real free-flowing conversation, whatever is of interest, what people are working on, and there's a lot of great sharing. We always follow up with detailed information about what's been mentioned so that people can connect with each other afterwards. And we also host an annual Collaborative Council meeting that coincides with our annual judicial conference, and we invite them to join the keynote speaker. And this year they'll be joining the CASA reception after the Collaborative Council meeting. So we'll continue that in FY23. The third here is about our outward presence on the website and the communication materials that we provide. We are really excited to partner with OCA in FY23 to get a brand new website look. And that'll be a big endeavor, but we really hope it'll be user-friendly. We have big dreams about making it more clear what resources are for parents, what resources are for youth, what resources are for attorneys and judges, and just making it a lot more user-friendly. And of course, we communicate a lot of our distribution through letters of interest and also through Twitter, et cetera. The fourth strategy here is our collaboration with the department and the participation in the federal reviews that occur. The department has input into our court improvement program that we submit to the feds, and we also provide input into their federal reviews. We anticipate perhaps that we could get a CFSR review in 24. So I think in FY23, we're going to be doing some planning. And it's my understanding from our partners in the federal government that they really do want a lot of legal and judicial involvement and court improvement involvement. And so we are more than happy to provide a forum to help inform your federal plan and to get the voices of judges and attorneys at the table. The last strategy here, number 5, we lovingly call assistance to local jurisdictions. It's one of the strategies that gives us some flexibility and a small pot of money to respond to ad hoc requests, like if somebody wants to have a scholarship to go to a specific specialty courts conference, perhaps we can use this strategy to do that. Or if they want to host a meeting, we can provide some support to a local jurisdiction using this strategy. So it just gives us a little bit of flexibility to provide that assistance on an ad hoc basis. So with that, I would like to announce that one of our own, Amy Corbin, is very sad, but she's unable to join us today. So Jocelyn Fowler will be providing the Systems Improvement Committee updates. Jocelyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Jocelyn Fowler, staff attorney here. And I was sick at our last in-person meeting. And so Amy and I are apparently playing tag team. At that meeting, I got a round table. So let's see what we can get Amy from this. Our first strategy on their systems improvement is our jurist and resident strategy. We, of course, will continue this strategy, engaging our 2 wonderful jurists and residents, Judge Rob Hoffman and Judge Piper McCraw. They provide invaluable support both to the commission staff and their colleagues here in Texas and nationwide. So we're lucky to have them and wouldn't change it. The next strategy encompasses our trauma-informed work. During this current fiscal year, the Commission and the Texas Center for Child and Family Studies, they're often called the Center, have supported several court sites across Texas that, as they're implementing trauma-informed court projects in their courts with a gathered court team of their choosing. And we hope to continue for this upcoming fiscal year that project. We'd like to continue supporting up to 6 sites with the center and helping them the project sites collect data and along with their personal goals with each court site. We really are hoping to create a growing body of knowledge and guidance for Texas courts on trauma-informed court approaches to the child welfare cases. This will add to the previous and ongoing work of the statewide collaborative on trauma-informed care. Strategy 8 is a new strategy for the commission. As I mentioned earlier, the roundtable that I got out of our last meeting. We've created a full strategy on those efforts. I'll discuss later in detail along with the Judicial Commission on Mental Health and our commission, we hosted the roundtable and have a final report out. There are copies available, and I'll give some more details on that later. But for this upcoming fiscal year, the commission would like to work collaboratively with JCMH to address the recommendations that came out of the roundtable and focusing much of our work on the role of the judiciary in improving systems, along with collaborating with all the many stakeholders on this issue. We will continue under strategy 9, addressing our work of our equity work group with a focus on how the judiciary can address disproportionality and disparities from the bench and collaborate effectively with their communities. We're so excited about the new and expanding Office of Addressing Disproportionality and Disparity at the department and are hoping to continue collaborating and growing with that office. Under strategy 10, this is integrated really into everything we do. We have a young adult representative on the Children's Commission and numerous work groups and committees to advise our work. And we also provide training and information to judges about the importance of our youth voice, which will continue, of course, into the next fiscal year and beyond. Under strategy 11, the commission will continue to support and promote the normalcy guide that was published by Texas CASA in 2022. This including placing the guide as a resource on our website and normalcy information included in our upcoming 2022 bench book that should be out in October. The commission will also continue to promote the Texas Youth Foster Justice Aging Out Guide for this fiscal year as well. Under strategy 12, as many may know, the commission is proud to be a part of the Early Intervention Court Liaison Project with PEI and OCA. This pilot is entering its 2nd year and have 3 wonderful liaisons that we're very excited about. And we're excited to continue seeing their progress in Bell, Lubbock, and Galveston County. And the commission will continue its collaboration with Texas A&M as they evaluate this project. 13 is another new strategy for us, which relates to the Family Preservation Services pilot program as directed by House Bill 3041. And as DFPS launches and expands this pilot program, the commission is ready to continue supporting both DFPS and the courts as that is implemented. Strategy 14 is our education strategy, and the commission will continues to work with its 3 work groups under the Education Task Force. The first is working on a caregiver resource guide for K through 12 and post-secondary. The data work group is meeting regularly and really building on the momentum set out in the 2018 data report. And the ESSA work group is putting the final approvals on some great deliverables, including a School of Origin resource document, and then they'll be moving on to transportation and records transfers documents. Under strategy 15, sorry if I'm going too fast, there's a lot under systems improvement. Under strategy 15, we will, of course, the commission will continue to meet monthly with DFPS and tribal representatives to maintain those relationships with the tribes. We will continue our work with our partners to continue strengthening education around IPWA and meaningful engagement with the tribes. With DFPS as assistant recently, the commission has been working on expanding connections with tribes, with our tribes that are outside of Texas who have tribal citizens with cases here in Texas, which has been exciting to kind of have more connections. And the commission is also currently working to identify a new tribal representative for the Children's Commission. Judge Loera was needed to step down, and so we're working on that. Strategy 16 relates to the commercial sexual exploitation of children work. You'll hear a little later from Patrick about new grants that the commission is seeking your approval on. One of those grants involves Texas Network of Youth Services, or TNOYS's proposal to conduct trainings around CSEC from a survivor standpoint and engaging the legal community. And we also continue looking forward to involving our current judicial work group in those efforts. Strategy 17 is our roundtable strategy, and the Children's Commission typically holds 1 to 2 roundtables each fiscal year as requested or needed to address emergent issues in child welfare. And again, you'll hear a little later about our 2 roundtables that we conducted this past fiscal year. Strategy 18 relates to the Qualified Residential Treatment Programs, or QRTPs. Senate Bill 1575 in the last session directed the commission to submit a report, which is due to the legislature tomorrow, October 1st. I believe it has been delivered. And you'll hear more from Jamie later on this report, which relates to RTC best practices and implementation of the QRTP model here in Texas. And the Children's Commission, of course, will participate in implementation efforts, and I'll let Jamie expand upon that later. And our last strategy under systems improvement is strategy 19. Children's Commission will analyze the results of the Child Protection Court dual status pilot evaluation and take steps to prioritize the recommendations from that report.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Next, we're going to turn to Dylan Mensch and Renee Castillo de la Cruz for legal practice and process.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, everyone. Our 20th strategy is to support a legal representation committee to sustain efforts to ensure high-quality legal representation for parents, children, and DFPS. The LRC has been working on several projects related to helping children and parents understand the attorney-client relationship. The Children's Materials Work Group has been working with the Texas Network of Youth Services Young Adult Leadership Council on a youth voice video explaining the attorney-client relationship. Videos feature young adults formerly in foster care discussing their experiences with their attorneys and articulating the basics about the attorney-client relationship. The work group reviewed an initial cut of the video and submitted edits to TNOYS. We have just received a final cut of the video last night. And I really want to thank the young adults who participated in this project, because it's their willingness to share their experiences that make it as powerful as it is. Now that the videos are finalized, the work group will need to develop a plan to publicize the videos to ensure that as many youth in care get access to this information as possible. The Parents Materials Work Group has also been meeting to finalize scripts for materials covering fathers' rights and the rights of incarcerated parents. Designs, drafts of both materials were reviewed by the LRC. The final version of the Father's Rights pamphlet is available today, and you should have one either at your seat, or there's ones available on the back table over there. That will be ready for distribution at the Child Welfare Judges Conference in October, and the final version for the rights of incarcerated parents is near completion, and we are working with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice on getting that information posted in facilities. The Children's Commission has also secured collaboration with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission to produce videos where attorneys and parents with lived experience talk about their attorney-client relationship, and production of those videos will begin in the fall. LRC members raised 2 new issues that the committee is planning to address this fiscal year: attorney recruitment and retention for court-appointed counsel lists, and the second is improving and supporting appellate representation. To address attorney recruitment, the Children's Commission is collaborating with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission to produce videos of child welfare practitioners explaining how and why they chose child welfare law as a career path and what they love about the work. Once completed, these videos will be made available to law schools and other organizations to raise awareness of child welfare law as a career path. The second strategy, the Children's Commission has identified experts in appellate representation to be included in an appellate work group that will be charged with identifying the needs of appellate attorneys and developing projects to enhance the quality of appellate representation. Invitations to the work group have been sent, and the work group will have its initial meeting on October 28th. The LRC also contains a DFPS representation subcommittee that plans to convene in late fall to assist with the curriculum planning for the Texas District and County Attorneys Association Crimes Against Children's course. The subcommittee will also meet near the end of the 88th legislative session to review and make necessary changes to the toolkit for attorneys representing DFPS. Our 21st strategy is to support the development and adoption of standards of representation for parents, children, for attorneys representing parents, children, and DFPS in child welfare cases. Commission staff has been working with the Texas State Bar on initiating a process to create Texas-specific standards of representation. Proposed members of a child welfare law standards of representation committee have been submitted. Invitations to those members have been sent, and the committee will hold its first meeting in the fall of 2022. The committee is charged with drafting standards of representation over the course of the next year and will submit a draft of those standards for approval to the State Bar in 2024. Our 22nd strategy is to assist the Texas Board of Legal Specialization, Advisory, and Exam Commission in their efforts to certify Texas attorneys as specialists in child welfare law. The 2022 Child Welfare Board Certification Exam will be held on October 3rd and October 4th. The exam has been spread out over 2 days to account for public health considerations and the safety of examinees and staff. There are 55 applicants that have been determined eligible to take the exam, and the Children's Commission will continue to reimburse exam fees for attorneys who pass the exam and become certified, as is laid out on the Children's Commission website. And I now turn it over to Renee Castillo to update us on our 23rd and 24th strategy.
Thank you, Dylan. Under strategy number 23, the Parent Resource Workgroup's pre-litigation resource guide is aimed at providing parents and caregivers with a better understanding of potential interactions with a child protection investigations unit. That guide is currently being revised and will be finalized later this year. The guide will be made available on our website, and the Parent Resource Workgroup will work on identifying partners such as the Texas Family Texas Family Helpline to assist with making the resource widely available. The work group will also reconvene this fall with a priority of finalizing content for a webinar focused on improving attorney-client communication using trauma-informed practices to enhance attorneys' understanding of their client issues. The work group will continue to work with the Legal Representation Committee on intersecting parent projects. Moving on to strategy number 24. The Texas Family Helpline continues to provide an invaluable service by providing statewide access to basic information, education, and resources to parents and individuals who have questions about the child welfare system. The helpline is working on creating content to better assist callers, including toolkits in collaboration with the Texas Center for Justice and Equity and for parents seeking to reinstate their parental rights. I'll now pass this back to Dylan to move on to the bench book.
Thank you, Renee. The Texas Child Protection Law Bench Book is currently undergoing updates, and the 2022 version is scheduled for release in late October. The 2022 version will include updates throughout, as well as a new chapter regarding dual status youth and a new checklist on qualified residential treatment programs. The updated version will be available on the Texas Child Protection Law Bench Book webpage in late October as a free downloadable PDF for print, and also as an interactive resource through the Law Box application. Our 26th strategy, which is one of our new strategies, is to maintain toolkits for attorneys representing parents, children, and the Department of Family and Protective Services in child welfare cases. We're very pleased to announce that all 500 copies that we printed of the 2022 toolkit for attorneys representing parents and children in child welfare cases were distributed over the last fiscal year. We will not be doing an additional printing in FY 2023, but the toolkit will continue to be available for free on the Commission's website and the Lawbox app. We also surveyed attorneys about how they prefer to access the toolkit, and 80% indicated that they did prefer a printed hard copy of the toolkit. The toolkit for attorneys representing DFPS also received its first update since its release in 2018. The update is now complete, and the 2022 toolkit for attorneys representing DFPS will be available on the Children's Commission website and the Lawbox app in early October, and the Commission will collaborate with the Texas District and County Attorneys Association to distribute hard copies to prosecutors and regional attorneys across the state. Work on the 2024 toolkits will begin at the conclusion of the 88th legislative session. Our 27th strategy is to support increased child and family engagement through the use of technology. Funding for upgraded technology to support hybrid hearings in 2 child protection courts was approved by the Commission in 2021 and was expanded to 4 courts in 2022. However, there are no additional plans to fund additional courts in FY 2023. Strategy is to encourage the availability and use of the Office of Court Administration Notice and Engagement tool. This is a tool that allows people to sign up automatically to get email and text notifications for cases. The OCA had been working with Tarrant County to see if they wanted to adopt the API that allows non-CPC courts to use the notice and engagement system. However, Tarrant County ultimately decided that CPCMS and its notice engagement tool did not fit their particular needs, and they've decided to use another port management system and notice and engagement system. However, OCA is committed to using the lessons learned with Tarrant County to improve collaboration with future jurisdictions who are interested in adopting the API. I'll turn it back over to Renee to update us on our mediation strategy.
Under Strategy 29, we convene and support a mediation work group. Members of this mediation work group recently met with Dr. Alicia Summers and Terry Deal of the National Center for State Courts to discuss participation in the second portion of NCSC's virtual court study. This will include data collection on virtual mediations. The mediation work group will reconvene this fall to focus on creating a mediation toolkit aimed at providing information for attorneys who would like to mediate child welfare cases. And a webinar content will be included as well related to the benefits of using mediation in child welfare cases. And back to Dylan for strategy number 30.
Thank you. Our last strategy that falls under LPP is to collaborate and provide support for specialty courts, dockets, and programs. This is a strategy that's developed on an ad hoc basis, and the grant request for the Houston Pearls Court, which you'll hear about later under the budget presentation, will be evaluated under this strategy. And that concludes the LPP update, and I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
Thanks, Dylan. I like to say not a meeting goes by where we don't talk about the need for training. So with that, I'll turn it over to Milby Rainey and Renee Casilla de la Cruz.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Milby Rainey. I'm the Assistant Director of the Children's Commission. And Renee and I are very excited to present you all with our proposed judicial and attorney training projects for this next fiscal year. We've developed these projects in consultation with the training committee members, and we base them on current identified gaps in training that training committee members have brought forward and that commission staff have identified. Our goal is to fill these training gaps with high quality judicial and attorney educational offerings at all levels of need, so that judges and lawyers have basic, intermediate, and advanced level training so that they can do their jobs to the best of their abilities. So starting with strategy 31, this encompasses our annual judicial education events. So beginning with the conferences that the commission hosts in partnership with the Texas Center for the Judiciary, we're planning our 15th annual Child Welfare Judges Conference. It's coming up very quickly on October 24th through 26th. This will be our first in-person judicial conference in 3 years, and we're thrilled. Registration just closed, we're full. Many of our speakers are in the room with us today, so thank you all in advance for your time and your preparation. And as always, this conference will feature presentation on current and emerging topics, include speakers and topics from the department, and also include the voices of those with lived experience in the child welfare system. This year, we'll once again partner with the agency and TCJ to facilitate regional breakouts. During these breakouts, the agency, staff, judges, and community-based care representatives meet to review and discuss regional and county level data that the department's data team prepares specifically for this conference. The Child Welfare Judges Conference is the Commission's largest judicial training event every year, and we plan to host this conference again in October of 23 with Texas Center for the Judiciary. We're also planning to partner with TCJ for a second judicial conference in fiscal year 23. We identified a need for basic level training for visiting judges in child welfare cases. And out of all of their yearly conferences, TCJ's annual Judicial Education Conference attracts the highest number of visiting judges. So we decided we would go to them. We plan to provide a speaker to present on child welfare law basics and to share information about commission resources. And that conference is scheduled for September of 23 in Houston. And finally, in terms of judicial training events that are coming up in the next fiscal year, we're planning to partner with the National Capacity Building Center for Courts to host a second virtual Reasonable Efforts Judicial Academy. This will follow on the success of the virtual Judicial Academy that we put on in January, also with the CBCC. We'll train a second cohort of Texas judges. This curriculum includes federal and state law on reasonable efforts, and it also offers experiential learning. Basically, the judges who take this virtual training cycle through 4 fictional case scenarios where they have the opportunity to make rulings on reasonable efforts. And incidentally, hosting the second Reasonable Efforts Judicial Academy will prepare commission staff to hopefully eventually host a Reasonable Efforts Attorney Academy. Number 32, this addresses the training that's designed to support our child protection court judges and their court coordinators. And our anticipated training here will be the biannual child protection court convening. This is held in odd numbered years at the conclusion of the legislative session, and it's specifically tailored for the CPC's needs. It covers updates to their data collection system, CPCMS. It also touches on ongoing pilot projects and features a presiding judge panel. This will be our third CPC convening since we started doing these in July of 2019, and we plan to host this training in July of 2023. And now I'll hand it over to Renee, who will talk to you all about pending attorney training.
Thank you, Milbury. Strategy 33 is our trial skills training program. Trial skills training is a 3-day high quality live and interactive training for less experienced attorneys. It is limited to 21 participants divided into 3 groups of attorneys representing parents, children, and the Department of Family Protective Services. The training includes volunteer faculty that consists of judges and attorneys from across the state, some of whom are here today on our collab council and on our commission staff and commission members. And it also includes actual DFPS caseworkers, medical professionals, and parent therapists, so that the participants are able to have the most realistic experience in a low stakes environment. We are planning on providing a trial skills training in the fall of 2023, and we'll work on content for either a 101 or an advanced trial skills training for fiscal year 24. Moving on to strategy 34, we will continue to create and provide in-house and stakeholder content on our website focused on topics that have been identified as relevant to our legal community. The commission is planning on several webcasts this year, including a webcast on youth voice, which will be held on October 20th. Additionally, we have received some great feedback from our training committee members at our August meeting, and we'll develop up to 2 webcasts related to psychotropic medication, and we'll be looking at the possibility of providing additional online content for the basics of child welfare law designed with visiting judges in mind. Under strategy number 35, the commission will continue to collaborate with the State Bar of Texas Child Protection Law section in connection on possible trainings and ways to partner together. We will also continue to provide content and speakers to TDCAA trainings, including the child welfare track of the Crimes Against Children course, and will provide support to DFPS related trainings and efforts for their attorneys on child welfare related matters. And I will now turn this back to Milbury for the next strategy.
Thanks, Renee. Strategy 36 refers to the commission's regular communiques to judges, attorneys, and stakeholders that Jamie referenced earlier. We've been sending out these communications since May of 2016, and in that time, our distribution list has grown to over 4,000 attorneys, judges, and stakeholders. These communications are about emerging and changing policies, laws, and practice, as well as information about upcoming training opportunities in child welfare law. And all of these resource letters are posted on the Children's Commission website. So finally, strategy 37, starting with judicial scholarships, the commission has allocated funding this next fiscal year to provide scholarships to qualified judges to attend 2 National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges conferences. There will be a spring conference in March, I believe, in Dallas. That'll be the Juvenile Justice Conference that NCJ puts on every year, FCJ, excuse me. And then the summer annual conference that FCJ will put on will be in Baltimore, Maryland. And now I'll turn it over to Renee to finish with attorney scholarships.
Thank you. The commission will also provide attorney scholarships for attorneys to attend state and national conferences and trainings. This will include the Advanced Child Protection Law course, which will be held in March, and the Advanced Family Law Child Abuse and Neglect Workshop and National Association of Counsel for Children's trainings, which occur generally at the end of August or in the middle of August of each year. We will also provide scholarships for attorneys representing DFPS to attend the TDCAA online Fundamentals of Child Welfare Law course, which was made in collaboration with the Children's Commission, and to their in-person child welfare law related trainings. This concludes our training committee report for fiscal year 2019.
Hey, Dylan's going to bring us home with the data committee strategies.
Thank you. Our data committee strategies are designed to help use data to improve the practice of child welfare all throughout the state of Texas. One of our main strategies, as Milbury mentioned earlier, is at our annual Child Welfare Judges Conference to partner with DFPS to provide a statewide data presentation. This year's statewide data presentation will include department data and updates on programs at the state level. We'll examine outcomes over the past year and review how these data vary across the state. Regional breakouts with judges will follow this presentation in order to examine and discuss regional data with an eye towards improving outcomes for children and families experiencing the child welfare system. Our 39th strategy under the data committee is to design and support and evaluate the efficacy of managing conservative short court model. The results of the preliminary studies of the PMC court model have been promising, but the evaluation work group has determined that the only way to evaluate the causal effectiveness of the PMC court model is to conduct a study that compares two groups: children whose cases were placed on the PMC court docket upon entering PMC, and children whose cases stayed in a non-PMC court. The work group also concluded that in order for the evaluation to give a complete picture of the court's effectiveness, it must be able to measure both permanency outcome indicators and well-being indicators. To accomplish those goals, the evaluation needed partnership with DFPS to allow access to children and youth in PMC in Dallas and Houston counties to collect well-being data and to track outcomes in both groups. Work group members and commission staff met with DFPS staff to discuss a draft of this evaluation request, and the work group submitted a formal request for access and data through the new DFPS Research and Data Request portal. Next steps on the project will begin once DFPS makes the determination about a decision on the application. Our 40th strategy is to utilize all data sources and to analyze trends in child welfare data such as referrals, investigations, removals, and exits. Commission and OCA staff, including senior data analyst Jeff Cox, have been analyzing trends in referrals, investigations, and removals prior to and after the changes made to the Family Code by the 87th Texas Legislative Session. And results on that analysis will be presented at the Child Welfare Judges Conference in October. Our 41st strategy is to identify best practices in conducting virtual or hybrid hearings and utilize this information to suggest improved legal and judicial practice. Senior data analyst Jeff Cox also completed a court observation tool to collect data on court practices in virtual and hybrid hearings and began observing court and collecting data in June of this year. The initial report on those results should be available this fall. Our 42nd strategy is to partner with OCA to support the maintenance, enhancement, impact, and usability of the Child Protection Case Management System. The CPCMS Advisory Council meets regularly to improve updates to the CPS system, and they approved updates that were released in May 19th and August 25th that included enhancing data collection and tracking of hearing attendance, adding statutory timelines for court-ordered services cases, allowing for multiple hearing types to be entered for one hearing, and adding an education tab to track special education services. The next meeting of the Advisory Council will be on October 7th to discuss additional enhancement to the system, and the Council will continue to meet quarterly throughout the fiscal year. Our 43rd strategy is to encourage the efficiency in data collection and information sharing, including integrating data between the CPCMS and DFPS impact systems, as well as expanding the CPCMS system to non-child protection courts and working with other jurisdictions that do not utilize CPCMS. The CPCMS and Impact Integration Work Group identified the need to develop a memorandum of understanding to share a sample data set to test the data matching criteria to determine whether data sharing and integration between CPCMS and impact systems could be successful. Negotiations over the MOU, however, were put on pause while DFPS announced an overhaul of its data request procedures. After that overhaul was complete and new web-based procedures were in place, the CPCMS and Impact Work Group met with DFPS to discuss the appropriate way for requesting this data set and to identify the proper data fields necessary to test this matching criteria. It was agreed that the web portal was not the appropriate venue to request this data set and that a data use agreement was more appropriate than an MOU. I'm pleased to announce that DFPS has completed a draft of that data use agreement and it's currently under review by OCA. We're hopeful that it can be finalized in October, which will allow us to test that data set and see if the CPCMS and impact systems can truly match cases. I also want to update that OCA had been collaborating with Tarrant County, as mentioned earlier, regarding the notice engagement tool. They had also been working with that collaboration regarding CPCMS. However, Tarrant County chose to go with a different path, but OCA is committed to using those lessons learned to improve collaboration with future jurisdictions who are interested in adopting CPCMS. And that's all I have, and I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
Okay, our next 50 strategies Patrick's going to cover. You must all be wondering, how much is this going to cost? So that's what Patrick's going to talk to us about with the budget.
They save the best for last also. Everybody wants to turn to tab 4 in your notebook. You'll start seeing the budget, and as Jamie said, this is forward. We're looking at 2023. This first budget in your notebook is gonna have our 2022 current financial status, but it's necessary to see what we're carrying forward. But we're not going to be talking about too much about this like we do at our typical middle of the year meetings. We're going to look really at that second page on the back, and that's going to be what we're proposing. All these projects that have been discussed, all 50 of them, are going to be included in this budget that we're about to go over. We're going to give you, in our next meeting, there's going to be a lot more information available about our FY22 outcomes of our grants once our grant reports and stuff get turned in, and we have our annual report complete. So moving on to this. So, okay, so starting with the top, we closed out our fiscal year 2022 with just over 1.9 million and carry forward to 2023. On September 20th, the Administration for Children and Families disbursed an additional $17,803 to the Commission for fiscal year 2022. Our federal funds are authorized to be used in that grant year 22 and throughout the following year of 2023. So being only 10 days prior to the close of FY 2022, these funds are going towards our carry forward. That's going to bring our estimated total funds available for 2023 to just under 3.8 million. Moving down to expenditures, the second table there, we anticipate the Commission's operation expenses to increase for fiscal year 23 to just under 1.5 million. This is an increase of roughly 20% from our 2022 operations, but I feel like it's a realistic not to exceed amount for us going into this next fiscal year. If you're not going to see operations broken down here in the notebook, even though there's a little bit more detail and than there is on your slides, I'd be happy to answer any questions after the meeting. Y'all have my contact information, but if we put every single piece of what our operating expenses make up, we need a lot more slides and pages of paper. So please reach out to me if you'd like some more information on where to see those. Moving now to our commission projects. You just heard a lot of the descriptions for each one of these budget items that we have here today for the proposed budget. We first have the assistance to local jurisdiction, which Jamie mentioned is a very small. You can see that it's only $5,000, but we typically use that to assist jurisdictions in trainings, and it's not something that we really advertise. It's not a scholarship. Next, we have our legal practice and process. 42,300, and that's going to cover hosting of our law box, and printing for the bench book, child and parent attorney toolkit, prosecutor's toolkit, in addition to printing cost of the mediation toolkit, parent resource group litigation guide, and father's incarcerated parents guide, which Dylan covered all those early on. Next is our systems improvement coming in at 30,000. That was covered by Jocelyn this morning, so that includes all of her work groups, foster care and student success, all of which are in those strategies that she went over previously. Moving down to training, we have allocated 86,000 for our trial skills and the biannual child protection court convening. That's going to bring our total commission projects to just under 175,000. Okay, moving on to our grants. We have received 8 applications that we are here today to have you vote on for the fiscal year 2023. Our grants are coming in at 790,211. All of these grants can be found after the blue page, the summaries in your notebook. I'm not going to go over each one of them. You can see the amounts there. Each one of these was discussed through the strategies. I did want to touch, there's one new grant, and that's going to be the Houston Pearls Foundation. That's the first summary that you have there. This is a new for 2023 for us and for Harris County. PEARL stands for the Preparation, Esteem, Achievement, Resiliency, Learning, Strength, and Stamina. The program is going to enroll 20 to 25 girls for the 2022-23 term. They're going to offer bi-monthly meetings, which include financial literacy workshops, goal setting, and career development. They also plan to encompass a boys program, Eagles, in the beginning in the spring. So most of you might, or some of you might be familiar with Bexar County Pearls Court, and we're really excited that Judge Brown and Houston have proposed this to Houston. So within the next year, they're going to be presenting at their commissioner's court for a specialty court docket. By bringing all of the Pearls and Eagles cases into a focused docket, the youth will be best suited to take dominion over their future. The specialty court will have informed and supportive judges and staff, all working towards the same goal, that is preparing youth for adult success. They are going to be documenting this whole process that they're going through, getting their mentors, how to reach out to community, to get community support, and provide that process so that other counties can create such courts throughout the state. I think every other grant that we have here was already mentioned previously in some of the attorney updates. So we'll move on to the next slide. Scholarships. All the scholarships were mentioned by our training. We have allocated $95,000 for scholarships for this fiscal year. And the final slide here, this is everything just put together. Our total proposed budget for 2023 is $2,545,671.
That is the end of the FY23 strategies and budget presentation. And so I'll turn it to you, Justice Lerman, if you want to open the floor for questions.
Are there any questions? Sure. So are we ready to vote? Okay, there is a question.
I was just going to make a comment that every time we have these meetings, the enormity of the work, from such a small team is always so impressive. And every time I come to a meeting and I look at it, it's quite a contribution that commission staff make.
Thank you for that. Yes, and I echo that. I certainly do. And Justice Huddle and I have gone over all of this quite in depth with the commission, and we appreciate it all very much. But we really do welcome questions. We have discussed all of this a lot amongst ourselves and executive committee. Baker. Oh, is there a motion first? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we have to have that. Second. Did you?
I second.
Okay. Okay, now all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Thank you so much. Okay, Jamie.
Yeah, it's been a great meeting. Thanks, everybody. No,
Since the child protection law section is in the budget, should we have somebody else second for the vote? I'm sorry, Sandra. Because right, we're supposed to.
thanks, Judge Chilton.
I second.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that motion again? I can't see. I don't have my glasses.
We needed a different second. So now we have one,
Oh,
Judge
we did.
Shelton.
Oh, okay. So we're all good, right? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We're really excited about the year ahead and appreciate the support for the projects. Now we are gonna make up some time. We'll be sure to get the mic over to DFPS right on time. We have 3 reports that were very recently released within this past 30-day period that we want to share with you. 2 were legislatively mandated, and 1 was a result of the roundtable that Jocelyn mentioned and that Justice Huddle and Justice Lehrman were a part of, and we're absolutely thrilled to do a partnership with the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. And unfortunately, again, Amy Corbin was lead on one of those projects. So you're going to have to hear from me twice. I will be her understudy today. So I'll be doing the first report, which is Senate Bill 1578. And for those who are not ledge trackers, this bill was about the use of the department's use of the Forensic Assessment Center Network, or FACN. So for those who are not familiar with the network, it was established in 2005 by the 79th Texas Legislature, which created the FACN as a joint effort with DFPS and the University of Texas Health Science Center, Houston, and they subcontract with several other hospital systems. The goals of this particular contract are to provide statewide access to forensic medical consultation services to DFPS staff. They also provide expert testimony regarding child abuse or neglect diagnoses in DFPS cases and ongoing statewide training on the medical aspects of abuse and neglect to DFPS staff and others as identified by the department. So in more simple terms, the network makes medical specialists available to DFPS during their child abuse and neglect investigations. So for a little bit of context, I think this is important. In FY 2020, which is the last data we have, DFPS referred 5,368, or 3% of their almost 155,000 total investigations to the FACN. So 3% of the investigations are going to this network. Of the cases referred, 43%, or 2,500 approximately, resulted in a DFPS finding of reason to believe abuse or neglect occurred. Overall, 11% of those cases referred to that network, 11% of that 5,000 number, received a determination from the FACN that ultimately resulted in a removal of the child from the home. So while the number of these cases is relatively low, the stakes couldn't be higher. When there's a very sick or injured child, which is usually the scenario where the FACN is consulted, the child, the agency, the family, and the doctors are faced with 2 devastating extremes. On one hand, there could be a credible explanation for the medical issue, and then the child could be unnecessarily removed and a family torn apart at an already impossible time. On the other hand, a child could be in very serious danger if the cause of that injury was abuse or neglect on behalf of the parent. And of course, there's so much gray area in between. So it's really important that we do what we can to put checks and balances in place so that the department can get it right as often as possible. So I want to tell you a little bit about this report. We do have extra copies here on the resource table and at the desk. It is already live on the Children's Commission website. It was submitted to the legislature on September 1st. So the 87th Texas Legislature charged DFPS in partnership with the Children's Commission to evaluate the use of this network and develop recommendations for improvement. To ensure a full evaluation, DFPS and the Children's Commission invited parents who had experience with the FACN, along with child and family advocates, child abuse pediatricians, other pediatric specialists, judges, attorneys who represent parents, children, and DFPS, all to share their experiences with us. The report goes through some background information on the legislation behind the FACN, the history of the network, the referral process, possible FACN determinations, the contract requirement between DFPS and the UT Health Science Center, Houston, and the data that is collected through this contract. The report also includes takeaways from a listening session that was conducted on April 4th, 2022. And the purpose of that listening session was to create a parent-driven conversation about their experiences. and elicit their suggestions to improve communication about the process and the interactions between the FACN, the department, and the families. The goal of that listening session was to reach more parents than those who could attend the roundtable and to provide a forum just solely to focus on their feedback and recommendations. I was moderating the discussion and we provided questions in advance. The department was present in listen-only mode, and the Texas Public Policy Foundation was also participating in listen-only mode. The discussion was a Q&A format. We provided those questions in advance, and 4 of the families who were in that listening session also came to participate in the roundtable, which occurred on April 11th. The roundtable was actually in this building downstairs with Judge Hoffman moderating, and Judy and Johanna were there, so we're grateful for all that they did to inform the report and the roundtable. It was a larger multidisciplinary meeting, so we had that standalone session with the parents, but this was where we brought everybody together, and Judge McCrow was there as well. And we heard from all the different perspectives on the issue about the use of the FACN. We had a lot of medical professionals, hospitals, parents, attorneys, judges, and it was a very elucidating conversation. And we took that information and developed some joint recommendations with DFPS, and we've categorized them here under these 5 categories: the potential contract revisions, resources that might be necessary in the field, training, data collection and information sharing, and general system improvement. And what we talk about there is things like trauma-informed care kind of go system-wide, but they're especially important, or there might be some unique considerations when the FACN is involved. So we wanted to include some, and also early legal representation is a big systemic issue, but also especially critical when there's a FACN in the picture. I did just briefly want to share with you all some of the legal pieces because I think that's most germane to this audience. So the recommendation regarding resources for the legal community, we talked about clarifying the role of the investigators and the FACN specialists. Imagine a scenario where a child's in a hospital and the parent is meeting all these different people. They don't understand who's performing which role and who to talk to about what. And so this was just to clarify roles and responsibilities, a specific resource developed for the families with them as the target audience to clarify the different players who may be interacting with them during this critical, difficult time for them. The second one was kind of a know your rights, to clearly articulate the rights to the parents during an investigation when the FACN is involved. We heard from the parents that it is maybe a little bit different than a standard investigation in that they don't know if they're allowed to leave the hospital or if they're allowed to consent to medical procedures. So there are some unique things that they just didn't feel clear about what they could and couldn't do and what their rights were in the process. So we thought these would be important legal resources and that those recommendations came out of the roundtable. We also fully acknowledge that we need to work towards training our main stakeholder audience, which is judges and attorneys. And we know that judges aren't hearing these cases very often, but when they do, they need a very specialized knowledge and they need to be well informed about how to handle the case, what they're seeing at the adversary hearing, what kind of questions they need to be asking to serve as a check and balance. So we talked about providing that in the future, as well as attorneys who represent the department, knowing what they need to do in terms of gathering evidence, providing disclosures, attorneys for children and parents, so that everyone is trained up and knows how to best present these matters before the court or handle them outside of court, in fact. And so we are very committed to working on these projects in FY23 in partnership with the department. And we would love to be of assistance if we can. And I will pause briefly to see if you have questions about this specific report before I turn it over to Jocelyn for the next one.
I have a question. Do you have an expectation that the legislature will act further on this topic in the session?
That's a good question. There were many changes to the way the FACN is used in the 87th, and part of that at the end of it was for us to study the issue. So I'm not sure if they'll wait another session to do more change to see how those have been implemented in the field. But a lot of these are not legislative in nature. I don't think any of the recommendations were legislative in nature. We talked a lot about policy meeting practice and that a lot of the things were somewhat clear in statute, but that we needed it to be implemented with fidelity. So does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else?
Jamie, I just wanted to say, I guess as an anecdote, very soon after we had the roundtable, I actually had an adversary hearing that involved a nonverbal autistic child that involved the FACN, and it was gut wrenching. And so I think the work that we did was very important and very, very thorough. So good job.
Thank you. Question?
I wanted to emphasize in the report, talking about the training, like I have a case going on right now, and I just had a conference with the judge, and the judges, like you said, they don't see these cases that often, but when they do, they're really different and important. And he sat there and told all the parties that he thinks an adversary on, we're going to have like 3 medical experts. FACN has 4 or 5. He thought we could do an adversary in one day. And we were like, no, you can't. Like, I mean, a couple of experts, they'll take up the whole morning just on the DFPS side. So that judicial training is really important to let judges know how different these cases run.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else, I encourage you to read the report, and I'll turn it over to Jocelyn to talk about children's mental health.
So as already mentioned this morning, and as a refresher, during our February 2022 meeting, members of this commission, this body, shined a spotlight on the mounting crisis in children's mental health as an urgent issue. We've all been discussing this for a few years now. And the discussion in February was particularly focused on the issue of children without placement and a rising concern of children in foster care experiencing behavioral challenges and where the needs are not being able to be met with those kids. So our Children's Commission and our Judicial Commission on Mental Health Leadership, Justice Lehrman, Justice Huddle, Justice Bland, and Judge Hervey agreed that judicial leadership in this area is critical, and that both of our commissions need to come together to address the challenges faced by children and families on this issue. And so for the first time since JCMH was created, we partnered to host a roundtable discussion, and which we call the Roundtable Discussion on Current Issues in Children's Mental Health. And we held this on June 24th. Unfortunately, did not get this room, which would have been really nice. State Bar is always a great spot. So participants included many of you in the room, and I thank you all for your time and attention that day. And we made sure to have representatives from the judiciary, DFPS, TJJD, TEA, as well as many stakeholders engaged with both commissions in planning this process, planning the roundtable. Both commission staff wanted to make sure that we were not just focusing on child welfare, but we were focusing on juvenile justice as well, as many of these kids with these mental health challenges we're seeing in both systems. So we're very grateful to Judge John Specia, JCMH's jurist in residence, who served as our moderator for the discussion. We started out the day with a presentation from Luann Southern, who many of you know and love as well as I do, for the executive director for the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium. And she provided an overview of children's mental health landscape in Texas. And then the format for the roundtable included an interactive discussion about gaps for systems involved children and youth, also current initiatives to fill those gaps. And we went into recommendation brainstorming for both short and long-term solutions. So the recommendations in the report generally fall into 4 categories: expanding awareness, training and tools, systems collaboration, and access to services. Through Luann's presentation and a lot of discussion from participants with a lot of years of history, a lot of history in this space, we gained a great picture of the history of children's mental health system nationwide and Texas, and into Texas specifically, starting back in the 1960s. It's really informative, and I think it provided kind of insight into approaches that have moved the needle forward in the past. And based on that history, for me, one of the biggest takeaways was the potential for collaboration across systems to meet the needs of our children. Each system has funding and support for children's mental health, but there's gaps in communication and collaboration across the system. And so that's allowing some of our kids to fall through the cracks. And an overriding theme of the day was that the child welfare, juvenile justice, education, mental health, and the other systems involved with children in this space have the ability to effectively serve and prevent systems involvement when they break down silos to help children and families. There was a lot of talk about our kids in the system now, but how do we keep them from even getting there in the first place? So a first step of sorts from the recommendations was addressing these system silos was developing a shared definition of what it means to successfully serve children with complex mental health needs. Creating an understanding of where we want to go will help all of our systems create a plan to accomplish these goals. And also, while we have a lot of great work to build on here in Texas, the participants really wanted to increase focus on both state and local levels on raising awareness about the importance of supporting children with mental health needs so that we, again, can prevent involvement in the first place. Several participants that day had lived experience, both as youth and parents, and it cannot be emphasized enough, the importance of spotlighting lived experience in trainings, as well as elevating and incorporating lived experience voice into all efforts to address this issue. And although many recommendations did focus on collaborative efforts from the child serving systems, there were some specific judiciary focused recommendations. I really think that the judiciary has a unique perspective and position to be a part of addressing this issue, both from the bench and also just as a community member. And so we hope to develop tools for judges to be better equipped to assist in this area, bench cards and trainings, and whatever else the group wills in the coming year. So this roundtable and report are truly just a first step. We didn't solve any big issues that day, but we got a lot of people in the room together to talk and collaborate. And I think that we started some great conversations, and I'm embodying Luann Southern's pure optimism and can only dream to be as optimistic as she is. It was a great way to start off this conversation. So we plan to have a smaller group convene in the fall and prioritize recommendations in the report and then move towards implementation so that we can do just more than just talk about this, we can really move the needle forward. I want to specifically thank Judge Specia, Luann Southern, Judge Hervey, Justice Huddle, and Justice Lehrman, as well as the commission staff, Jamie, Jessica, Tiffany, and the JCMH staff, Christy, Molly, Davis, Michael Sipes, and Rose McBride that made this report possible. And Rose developed a video that I think we have time to share. Hopefully the technology gods will smile upon us.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Huddle, a justice on the Supreme Court of Texas. I'm honored to be the Deputy Liaison to the Judicial Commission on Mental Health and the Deputy Chair of the Texas Children's Commission.
Hi, I'm Barbara Hervey. I'm a judge on the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and I'm co-chair of the Judicial Mental Health Commission.
I'm Justice Deborah Lehrman, Justice on the Supreme Court of Texas, and I also serve as the chair of the Permanent Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. 6 months ago, when we had our meeting, one of our meetings, the issue was raised how important the issue of mental health is with our children who are in our child protective service system.
Today is the first time we've ever had joint session of both of these commissions. It's historic because it just has never happened before. We brought experts in from all different kinds of substantive areas.
We realize with both commissions that there's overlap, and there's a lot of things that judges can do. Youth is our most important resource, and so with the crossover, we can help each other.
We have state agencies, members of the judiciary, physicians, researchers, all kinds of expertise in the house today.
I think as a judge, when we're in court, we basically see snapshots of cases, but it's really the hard workers behind the scenes. And a lot of times we don't know who those people are. So I think it's good for us to be here today to kind of learn the intersection between some of the mental health resources out there, as well as what the community resources are.
Discussions about what's not working and what's working is going to allow us to collaborate with each other in order to come up with solutions, not just talk, but actually walk the walk.
We began by identifying gaps in the systems, and the second part of the meeting is aimed at talking about solutions, and we're looking for data-driven, concrete specifics.
Long term, I think we really need to kind of prioritize what resources are out there, what additional ones we need, and obviously, is there money available to get resources for kids.
People were coming up with ideas about what should happen as a state to address children with mental health needs who are also involved in child welfare and juvenile justice. I know that based on those recommendations, we're going to come together again and we're going to come up with solutions, real world solutions that are going to have an impact.
I hope that we can have more interplay with all of the agencies here.
We still have a lot more work to do, and we're going to get it done because now we brought everybody to the table, and we're going to hopefully make some changes that are needed. The sky's the limit when it comes to what more we can do together.
We have an unbelievable group of very, very experienced professionals who have done this for years, who know what the problems are, and are working together to try to come up with solutions that will really help all Texans throughout this state.
I feel hope. I feel like after the meeting today, we have a time right now is our opportunity to take this moment and do something and take action. And I really feel like we will. I think it's going to happen.
I will pass it back to Jamie.
Anybody have any questions? Dr. Thompson? I have the enviable task of following that video. This is the third report, and I will make it brief. This one's Senate Bill 1575. This is very hot off the press. We got it from the printer this morning. It was delivered to the legislature. It's due by tomorrow. Senate Bill 1575, for those who aren't legislative wonks, it relates to the oversight of and best practices on RTC, Residential Treatment Center, and Qualified Residential Treatment Program, QRTPs, alphabet soup here, placements. And QRTPs, as some of you may know, are a relatively new placement here in Texas. There's an open procurement. We don't have any live just yet, but the concept was introduced by the Family First Prevention Services Act, a federal law that passed in February of 2018. And Senate Bill 1575 added judicial oversight over qualified residential treatment programs into the Texas Family Code. But when it was authored, there was some concern that there would be accountability for these QRTP placements, but not the same level of oversight for RTC placements for children who also have therapeutic need and are in a more congregate facility. So the bill charged the Children's Commission in partnership with DFPS to develop some recommendations to address those concerns about what judicial review should be required and what are some of the best practices related to RTCs. Okay, it doesn't want me to say it. The Senate Bill 1575 charged us to create a work group, and that work group was given a charge to consider the appropriate use of and improve transition into and out of residential treatment center placements, including judicial review of RTC placements, the fiscal implications for judicial review of RTC placements, the duration of RTC placements and how we can improve that, and best practices for transition planning and family engagement for all participants and preparing the child for their next placement. It also required us to look into appropriate judicial findings, the evidence that would be gathered to inform those findings, and the information that would be required to be collected by the child's attorney and guardian ad litem. And lastly, we were also charged to contemplate model court orders to memorialize the statutory requirements that we would be suggesting. This work group was chaired by Judge Hoffman. We're very grateful for the many, many things that he does for the Children's Commission. But the Senate Bill 1575 work group met 4 times over approximately a year and a half, and they created 2 subgroups, a legal subgroup and an RTC best practices subgroup. Each of those subgroups met on a monthly basis. So these folks were working very hard, and the member lists are in the book, and I really strongly am so grateful to all of them for their efforts, because this was a great learning for us, and they really informed the process. It was a neat experience to have so many providers at the table and to mix that more with the legal community. And I think it was a great learning for everybody. So again, I'm just going to focus on the most germane recommendations to the legal and attorney stakeholders. And for the legal subgroup recommended that although we did ultimately draft some court findings, we did want to put in there that we thought to the extent possible that alternative dispute resolution would be favorable to having everything litigated in court, so that mediation and other ways to resolve disputes should be explored before bringing everything before the court in a more litigious environment. There was also a recommendation by the legal work group to do an analysis regarding the court oversight that we're recommending. And that to the extent that there are existing data fields, we should use what we already have in CPCMS or some other case management system to track outcomes for children that are in RTC and QRTP placements. We did draft court findings for RTC placements. They look similar to the QRTP placement findings, but they are a little bit different. And they're in Senate Bill 1575, there was a requirement that the courts continue to review the placement at subsequent status and permanency hearing reviews, but that wasn't embedded into those parts of the family code. So there's a recommendation here to just circle back and include QRTP and RTC placement reviews in the status and permanency hearing reviews sections of the family code. We also added recommendations for enhanced guardian ad litem duties when children are placed or potentially could be placed in RTC or QRTP placements, and also added a component that they would have access to the information that they need in order to do that work. Similarly, we suggested additional attorney duties that attorneys should be inquiring of the child what they think about this proposed placement and advocate for the child in court regarding what their desires are. We also suggested a provision regarding parent attorney access to the meetings regarding RTC placements so that Parents Council could have access to those important discussions about transition planning if that's appropriate. And we also recommended adding the placement in an RTC to the Notice of Significant Events statute in Chapter 264 of the Family Code. I would also invite you to check out the best practice recommendations. I do want to acknowledge that this was a little bit outside our comfort zone. There are so many rules and regulations and standards regarding how RTCs operate. And we were tasked with looking at the ceiling, not at the floor. So our hope was to really just set some more aspirational goals, not add more responsibilities and more duties on folks. And we fully acknowledge the landscape of things that already exist, and all of that is cited in the report. But what we really wanted to do was encourage that innovation that I know all these RTC providers want to do, and just provided some suggestions about how they might be able to do that with family engagement, with youth engagement, and with enhanced transition planning. And I will pause and see if anybody has any questions about the 1575 report.
Jamie, can I say something? This was an extremely complicated issue, and a lot of people did a lot of hard work to get this report out, and you should be congratulated for it. I know Judge Graves Harrington, that's here, she was on a legal subgroup. They worked very, very hard. And to follow up on what Ann said earlier, you know, in addition to the 40 or 50 things that we're talking about that we do, I think as the reputation of the commission grows and its expertise is recognized across the partnerships that we have, we're going to have more and more legislative mandates like these two things that we've just reported on, which the staff is doing in addition to the 40 or 50 things we talk about up there. And we would probably anticipate that happen again this session. And so I just want to congratulate you and your staff for doing an excellent job in getting these reports out so promptly.
Judge Hoffman. And here. That did trigger me to say that at the end, we certainly voiced our commitment to continuing the collaboration with the department to implement these recommendations. So we're looking forward to that. Okay, well, that concludes our report. And if there's nothing else, I will turn it over to the department to provide your update.
Really quick, I know we stand between everyone. So but on behalf of our extremely dedicated staff, I do want to take an opportunity to share some good news about the department. I think we often find ourselves being reactive to the headlines that tell our narrative for us, and often isn't what is really happening. So thank you for the opportunity to take a few minutes to do that. And this is how our state compares to other states according to the federal data. Children are removed into foster care in Texas at a rate of 2 per 1,000 children, a lower rate than the national average. We rank 12th in this measure. We are only removing when necessary to protect children from serious harm or worse. You often hear the term permanency because it is important, along with safety and family. We focus on permanency constantly and very deliberately. Permanency means that a child in foster care will get a permanent home, either by going back with family, if that can be done safely, or living with another relative or being adopted. Of the children and youth in care who leave to a permanent home within 12 months, only 3% come back into the system within the next 12 months, compared with 6% nationally. This is a performance to be proud of. Only 2 states are better than us in this specific measure. Texas has been criticized for the length of time our foster children remain in care, but according to the national data, Texas ranks number 7. Only 6 other states achieve a lower percentage of children who stay 2 years or longer. Another essential measure is how often kids in foster care move around from placement to placement. Less is more in the truest sense here. We don't want a lot of movement in the system. Multiple moves just add to the anxiety and the chaos that our kids in care are already experiencing. I hear numbers about this all the time, kids with 20, 25 placements or more. And that certainly can be true for some children, and we will get better. But the data says the actual average for Texas is between 4 and 5 per 1,000 days, or between 1 and 2 moves a year for each child. We rank in the middle of states here at 24. Our kinship placements have increased in recent years. We are close to the national average with 34% of all kids in care placed in kinship settings. Our rank among the states is 29th. And with the emphasis that I put on kinship care, and I know you want more kinship placements, I fully expect our performance to improve. While I will state emphatically to you that the goal is 0 and will always be 0, the public perception is that the Texas foster care system is one of the worst, if not the worst, in allowing foster children and youth to be abused or neglected. And that is not true. Our ranking of 23rd is not nearly good enough, but we are better than 38 states and 1 US territory. We will continue to improve and make the safety of these children in our care of Texas our single highest priority. I'd also like to mention, our 2021 report on fatalities were down, and I think that gets missed and is something that absolutely should be celebrated. Drownings were down 26%. Unsafe sleep deaths were down 30%. Vehicle-related deaths were down 43%, and physical abuse-related deaths were down 16%. I think those are all huge celebrations. I hope this data submitted by the states and compiled by the federal government may begin to give you a fresh perspective of DFPS. The only thing that should matter is whether we are fulfilling our mission to promote safe and healthy families and protect children from abuse and neglect. And I would argue that we all are doing that. I will follow with just a brief update of our LAR, and then I will pass this to Erica to discuss House Bill 3041.
The members just received a copy of the exceptional items.
Okay. All right. The first exceptional item focuses on sustaining current agency and SSCC operations. Our second exceptional item focuses on strengthening agency operations. This request includes a biennial total of $12.9 million and 15 staff to address the backlog of growing demand of records requests, as well as creating a secure contracts and grant management system to reduce audit risk and reduce manual processes. The third request is to strengthen information technology and data resources. The fourth is to expand community-based care into 4 new stage 1s and 4 new stage 2s. Fifth, the agency focuses on salary equalization across multiple areas. The department is experiencing high turnover and seeks to stabilize the workforce. The sixth exceptional item request is for direct delivery program support. In this request, the agency looks to build investigative support by expanding and improving internal quality assurance, expanding purchase client services for adult protective services, and reinstating full funding for APS program support. The request also includes support for kinship and relative placement through enhanced permanency care assistance, needs-based funding program for kinship caregiver services, and a kinship foster home verification benefit. The agency also looks to expand post-permanency purchase client services into new areas, as well as an enhanced post-adoption services. The eighth exceptional item looks to expand prevention and community well-being services. And the ninth supports bringing statewide intake hold times to 5 minutes. There are also 3 placeholders, one for an HHSC assessment placeholder, another for foster care rate modernization, and then finally foster care lawsuit compliance for our SSCC. If there aren't any questions about either, I will pass it over to you here.
So I'm going to give you a just an update on, I believe the last time y'all met, they talked it was like the beginning stages, I think, of talking about House Bill 3041. So we're super excited about this new pilot that we're about to launch. It'll go live actually in one of the regions on Monday, October 3rd. Yes. I know. So House Bill 3041 does direct the FPS to create this pilot program that allows for the use of Rider 48B and Family First Prevention Service Act, which is FFPSA. And it's to keep a child who is at imminent risk for removal in the family's home safely while evidence-based services are being offered through court-ordered family preservation services. So this led us to create the Texas Family First pilot program, which is being created and currently is going to be implemented in the 4 regions across Texas that are currently practicing community-based care or are doing community-based care. The program will offer judicial oversight and due process for parents and children. The pilot is being launched in various rural counties and 1 urban county across Texas. The counties were chosen in areas where community-based care is already established, and the counties served were selected in areas where there is a lack of services available to families. So the 4 current SSCCs, the single source continuum contractors that we have is in Region 1, we have St. Francis. And they're going to be launching this pilot, or we're going to be launching this pilot in partnership with them in 9 of the rural counties. Region 2, which is headed by 2 Engage, they're going to actually serve all 30 counties of that region. And then we have Region 3 West, which is served by OCOK, and they're going to be serving 5 rural counties and then 1 urban county. And then Region 8B, which is Belong, and they're going to be serving 5 rural counties.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but so how does this change the standard for removal?
Yes, so in the traditional model, we would probably be moving a child out of the home. And with these cases, we are going to do everything possible to try to get somebody to come into the home. We will not, the child has to be in the home in order to be a part of the pilot.
My question is, what is the different, typically children are not removed unless they're in danger of something serious. And so I'm trying to visualize where we are, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so when in an investigation, right, we kind of go down the trajectory of, is there risk? How high is it? Is there something that we can implement? So we are going to, right now, we do have cases where it's very high risk and the plan is to go through removal because of whatever the situation may be in the home. These cases will be given services that are I would call them, as I look at the services that the single source continuum providers are going to be providing, they are very intense. They are wraparound, they are trauma informed, they're age specific to the kids. And I do think that I hope that through this pilot, what we learn is that providing these type of intensive services might make the difference in being able to keep a child in the home safely while providing the services versus the traditional route that we have right now. There are not these types of services.
Do you mind giving us an example of a fact pattern that may fit into that category?
Sure. I would say a case where we have a parent who is actively using methamphetamines or actively using cocaine, and we have a family member who's willing to move into the home to provide supervision for the parent. And one of the services that's going to be provided is actually wraparound services for drug treatment, which is very different than what we traditionally do. So the whole family would be engaged in that treatment versus just one parent. And the hope would be that by providing those intensive services, wraparound services, we would be able to prevent that child from coming into the system. When I look at the services that are going to be provided, I think that's what will make the difference. And I hope that what we learn through this process is that we can keep families intact in the home, even when there is some risk, some high risk actually, by engaging all the family, but most importantly, by providing services that engages the whole family, by providing services that are trauma informed, that are evidence-based, and services that are actually focused on a very specific age group. So they have services that are focused if you have children from 0 to 10, right, that are specific for that group versus just giving services that are for all age groups. They have motivation interviewing, which is a very different approach when working with families in terms of how you engage them. So I am hopeful that as we run through this pilot, we will be able to see that services such as these, number one, are needed. And that we will be able to keep even more children out of the foster care system by providing such services.
And so are there plans by the department to have more frequent monitoring of these children and these at home?
Yes, so we actually have dedicated family-based safety service caseworkers that are going to be working specifically with these families. And then, of course, we have the court oversight. There is attorneys that are appointed, which is really important. There'll be guardian ad litem appointed to the child as well. So one, they will be getting some intensive in-home services. The SSECs are also kind of providing some pieces of that as well. So that's another individual that will be working with the family. Then you have the evidence-based services. You have the intensive caseworker that's working with them. So I do believe that alongside of just the services, it's also a very intensive program.
Do all of these children have CASA representatives?
So that's a really good question. So we're just starting the pilot, and we typically in court-ordered services, we do not, or the court does not appoint CASA. Typically what they get at an appointment is a guardian ad litem. So I anticipate that perhaps they might play a dual role, but that of course is up to the discretion of the court.
And who are these guardian ad litem? Lawyers?
Yes.
Have you all seen any effect from House Bill 567 that made it harder to remove children who were neglected? Allegedly.
Yes. So 567 did, it increased the threshold, right, for neglect. And we did see a drop in the number of removals. What I will say is that in my experience I have a really good working experience in family-based safety services. And I do believe that House Bill 567 has really helped us to focus a little bit more intensely on those that are higher risk. which I think is important to some degree, because when you're trying to focus on everything, then you lose focus, right? So I do think that 567 has allowed us to focus a little bit more on those very high risk families. It has dropped caseloads, which then leads us to be able to work with families a lot more intensively. And so as a result, I think what you're seeing is there's a way lower number of children coming into foster care. And while we are working a lower number of cases in family-based safety services, I do believe that the families that we are focusing on, again, they're very, very high risk. And so if you have a manageable workload, you're able to work more intensely. And for family-based, that really does make a big difference.
Have you seen that any of these children who have not been removed, who might have been removed before that bill was enacted, are there any statistics that you have on whether any of those children have been harmed?
So when we look at the recidivism, because we do look at recidivism for closed family-based safety cases, and we look back a year and our recidivism has not increased.
If I could, Judge, you asked some really good questions, Judge Lehrman. And what you have on the pilot that Erica was just describing to you, you also have charts that will show you how we work cases today, and in the pilot areas, what this would look like. So these are kind of a landscape picture of what the change is. Now, the pilot is the result of legislation, state legislation, and it's the first foray into the Family First Act here in Texas. But it's a very, very narrow population, very small population, and one that also requires judicial involvement, judicial orders on these services. We're certainly hoping over time that Texas is able to expand the definition of what families are eligible for family first services. So this is a very narrow approach at this point in time, but we certainly hope we learn a lot in how to do that and how to, make it more viable for families to keep their children at home safely. And that will be our first direction will always be safety.
And I certainly appreciate that. I certainly think the department does a very wonderful job of taking care of a very difficult situation. I do want to make sure that whenever you have guardians ad litem who are lawyers who are very, very busy, that the department does not depend on that avenue exclusively for sure or much, because attorneys do the very best they can, but they're really not, they don't see themselves in that role like a CASA volunteer does. And so no matter what you call them, it's not our training. And so I know you all know that, but we don't want to have a tragedy occur.
Yeah, and that's why, we are specializing caseworkers that will just be working these cases. And so I think that that's a plus for the family because they'll get more time with the worker. So we will have good oversight over the cases. And as the pilot moves forward, we will do an evaluation on it and really look at, what does that data look like? Is it improving? Is it helping? Is it helping to keep kids out of the foster care system? I always say family-based safety services has a unique opportunity to really help families stay together in their community, in their household. And I always try to tell my workers, it's our last opportunity before they come into the legal system, because once they come into the foster care system, we all know how difficult it can be for a parent to keep motivated, to keep going and to work a service plan. And so anytime we have an opportunity to pilot something that will hopefully keep kids out of the foster care system, it's an amazing opportunity, because again, once they come in, it is really difficult and we have to acknowledge that.
And I know I certainly appreciate that. When you say that one of the main reasons or the facts that give rise to this is a lot of times parents who have found themselves in the very, very unfortunate, and that is a very nice word for it, a situation of being addicted to meth. That is a very difficult thing to overcome, and something that would need intense supervision. And just because a person is in a situation where they're going through therapy for that, as you know full well, children are in a lot of danger in that situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Judge Sarah Crockett, I'm sitting in for Vicki Spriggs today. I'm the Director of Public Policy with Texas CASA. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things about this pilot as it relates to the role of the guardian ad litem and also just court-ordered services in general. So when they overhauled court-ordered services last session, the role of the guardian ad litem was actually not included in the legislation. So now, as it stands, children are only required to have an attorney ad litem for court-ordered services, and that's true in House Bill 3041 as well. One of our goals for next session is to add the role of guardian ad litem as an optional appointment when judges think it's appropriate. CASA has historically not served in court-ordered services cases. And our big reason for that is because we aren't allowed to receive state funding unless there's a suit affecting the parent-child relationship. But a lot of our jurisdictions we do have courts that want us to serve in that role. And especially now that court-ordered services is much more structured, we do see CASA serving in as a potential, if we're already serving 100% of kids in a jurisdiction. That is something that we want to see. We want to be able to play a role in helping to preserve families and speaking up for the best interests of kids. And so that's something that we're looking at. But right now, guardians ad litem are not really being appointed in these cases. And it's in part because they were not included in the statute. And so essentially, court-ordered services mimics a TMC case with the exception of the guardian ad litem appointment as it stands right now.
Thank you very much for that. That's something that we need to look at. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, good morning, Sarah. You actually hit on one of the statements that I was going to make regarding the appointment of the guardian ad litems, but I did want to go back to the statistics that we discussed, that were discussed. Regionally, how do you see the breakdown in terms of the recidivism and the effects of House Bill 567 on the removal and the harm that's being caused to children? I ask because I am in Region 6A and I see a huge impact. 567 has caused a great impact. And I just saw 2 cases last week that would blow your mind. And the department finally got the hint that, okay, it's okay to go ahead and file this now as a SAPSR. Children who are literally on the verge of death.
Could you expound upon that? Because that's certainly the concern.
Yes.
567 has.
Yes, I can. So, and I don't want to speak for the department, but I get the impression that there is a great hesitation to even do anything when they go in and see these families that don't rise to the level of what we don't have a clear definition of, but what we've been told is immediate harm, right? And so we have families that, we have a really big meth problem right now. So we have families that are strung out on meth where teachers have called in cases because the children are coming to school dirty. Some are coming to school once every few weeks. And the department, I don't know, I don't think these are becoming FBSS cases because there's no track record of this. And so when they finally come into court, you know, the children have suffered a great deal before they actually bring it into court as a SAPSR case. And so that's my biggest concern, is that we're waiting maybe a little bit too long. And I understand the hesitation of the department. As Commissioner Master said, you all get a bad rap for some things that are happening, but I think that just taking a hands-off approach, or, you know, let's wait and see approach, is really causing a lot of harm to our children. And so that is something that really needs to be revisited, especially because there is no you know, immediate as in what, as in this moment, is this child going to die? Or if this parent has been on meth for 5 years, you know, when do we get to that immediate harm? You know, so that's my big concern. And then another concern, I had another family that came in and the grandmother thought she had custody of the child because of an FBSS case that I don't know how these cases are closed out or how people realize that these cases are finished, but she had an FBSS case from 3 years ago. Nothing else was ever done. She just had this document that said, you know, the children were to be placed with her, but it never came to court. And so she thought she was the legal guardian of these children whose mother had passed away. And I had to explain to her that no, so I don't think the families quite understand what FBSS is either. They think they have a court order when they go through this process. And so if we're going to lean heavily on FBSS cases or going through that process, the participants really need to understand exactly what this is they're getting involved in.
So I'm sure Erica will want to follow up. If there's a child at risk of harm, we will move swiftly to remove that child from that harm. That should be the message that is being sent throughout the department. And if we could, I would love to get the information on those 2 cases so that we can run those to ground specifically and follow back up with you. Obviously, if it's safe to do so, we want to protect that parent and child bond and keep a family together and work with them if it is safe to do so. But if it is not, under no circumstances would I tolerate taking a hands-off approach. And so I would appreciate knowing more about the cases you're talking about so that we can follow up on those and see where the breakdown is.
And I'm not certain that it's anecdotal. I think maybe I'm just a little bit more vocal than others are, but I don't think that it's a one-off. I really don't. And I tell you, when I was practicing law, I used to represent families who had FBSS and they thought they had cases and they would tell me, you know, I was appointed XYZ, and I look at the paperwork and say, no, this is just, you know, a safety plan, basically. So, you know, there's a huge concern there. And the last time we had some type of training, I think it was with the Alliance, and they discussed the outcome of these cases. And some of these cases were actually reason to believe cases, but there was no actual case brought and it just went away. So, and it's a pretty significant number in Region 6A. And we can talk about that more as well, but I think we're missing when we talk about because those are some great numbers that you all have given. And I do believe that the department is doing great work, but there's also a lot that's going on that's not being highlighted in those numbers. And so I just think, you know, we need to take an overall approach to this and really focus on, you know, it's great that kids are staying out of the system per se or out of CPS, but if they need to be there, then it's not so great that the numbers are down with it. So.
And Erica and I would love, we would even love to travel and sit down with all of the judges and hear the concerns and be able to have those conversations to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I appreciate the feedback because I think we're continuously trying to figure out like how do we improve the practices, right? How do we implement all the legislation that comes our way and what does it really look like out in the field? And so your feedback is really important for us. In terms of we work very closely with grandparents, and you're absolutely right. Some grandparents really do think I have custody and this piece of paper is law. And, and then they find out 3 years later, like, no, it's not. I started working really closely with a grandparent in Bexar County, and she actually started like the big grandparent work group. And so I work very closely with them. Mercedes, you all might know who Mercedes is. And so when me and Mercedes first met, she was very upset because she had a lot of grandparents that were coming and saying, I thought I had custody and I don't have anything. And CPS just left me with nothing. And as we grew our relationship and really educated one another, what we figured out was that there was a lack of understanding on our side from the perspective of the grandparent. And then there was a lack of understanding on the grandparent side, what the system is, which is a very complicated system, right? And sometimes even if the caseworker explains it 10 times, they're not going to understand it, right? And there's a lot of confusion. And I know that this is a complicated system. And so we did a lot of work to work closely with the grandparents to really explain that, you know, in order to get to the level of removal, we have to demonstrate that we have all reasonable efforts, right, have been exhausted, and that kids are in danger, right, in imminent danger, and that it's not as simple, because grandparents or relatives sometimes think like, you know, why can't you just remove and give me custody? Why can't you do that for me? There's a threshold, right? And there's a family code and there's law that we have to follow. And sometimes they don't understand that, you know, we can't just go and take a child and give them custody. And sometimes it does end with just them having, you know, the parent leaves the children there and we don't have enough to remove. Sometimes we try to remove and we're told, no, you don't have, the kids are not in danger. Mom hasn't picked them up in 6 months. You don't have the threshold to meet removal. So it took a lot of communication between us and the grandparents group and us educating one another in order to come to the understanding that, you know, we don't have the ability to just go and remove kids, and that there is processes that have to be followed in order to take a child into custody, because that's one of the most, I mean, that is just one of the most important things that we do in this agency, right? When we remove a child, we need to make sure that we are removing for the right reasons. I put myself in a parent situation, and if somebody came to take my child, I would want to make sure that everything has been done before somebody comes and removes my kid. And so I say that because we have the issue that you're bringing up has been brought up to us. We did start a grandparent group in state office to get the voice of the relatives and the grandparents, because we want to do better about how we explain things to grandparents and relatives so that they understand this is what this document really means. It doesn't mean custody, right? It's simply a safety plan. And so we continue to do work with foster parents, with grandparents. They are vital to the work that we are doing. And we will continue to partner with them to do a better job when we're interacting with grandparents and when we're communicating with them, because I'm not going to sit here and say that we always use the right language. We sometimes use our crazy acronyms and, you know, don't speak the way we need to speak. We learned a lot along the way, but we have a lot of work to do. So I certainly appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Judge Ferguson.
Question. Go ahead. Simon.
6-7 didn't make the effort way that we evaluate and get to. The meth issue is a great example because Justice Huddle may remember I brought this up a while back, but we had a meeting of this group by Zoom a couple of years ago, and I mentioned that over 90% of my removals are because of meth in the home. And there was a little discussion. And so we just went quickly through the judges in the Zoom, and every judge who responded unmuted and said, me too, and went back. And so we realized that meth is the driving force for many of us in our CPS removals. And it is true that you can no longer possibly say, well, because a parent's using meth, we can remove the child, which sort of is the way it was always done. So now we have to rethink how we do it. And 303 is a great example of that. Now the order in aid of investigation, because the science says parents who use meth and are in the physical proximity of their children, those children have a much higher odd of being positive for meth because it can pass through skin transition, which marijuana and cocaine and others are not likely to do. And so now what we should be getting is 303 requests. Parent is caught with meth or positive for meth, test the child. In my court, when the parents come in positive for meth and we test the kids, almost every time the kids are positive for meth because the parents don't understand that holding a child makes the child positive for meth. So we need to take 5, 6, 7 as an opportunity just to reevaluate the tools we have, like the order in aid of investigation, which is a probable cause standard. It doesn't require the knowledge of emergency, it requires probable cause. So we all need to refocus, especially on meth. We've talked about how passionate I am about meth in the homes, because that's the hardest drug to kick. It's the least services we have to give the parents. We take a meth addict, we take their kids and say, you have 12 months to prove to me you're not on meth anymore. It's almost unrealistic to the point of cruel. And I would love to talk more about that another time, but I feel like we need to reevaluate the path when it comes to meth addicted parents and meth in the home. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you so much, Judge.
So a couple of things. One, with regard to that situation that doesn't rise to the level of removal. In Brazoria County, my local attorneys know, brown bag oranges, and we talked about this, that they have permission, they have a relative, a family member to file a SAPSER independent of the CPS case or the investigation. Because if that family member is stepping up, the family code's already there for setting up standing to get into court so we can get that child out of a situation like that. So that's one thing that they already know, that the family code's already there. But then the other thing I had a question about is, in my county, it's the only county I can talk to about, but in my county, there's a lot of cases that we don't have a family member that is willing to go into that home. So my question is, I know it's expanding upon the pilot, but is there any thought to pouring all of those same services into a child where there is no relative that's willing to go into their house, maybe put them into the relative's house? Because I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing as the difference between the typical traditional investigation and this one that you have the pilot on is in the house being the one significant change, and then all the services you're pouring into the child versus the parent. And I think those are really good services you're pouring into that child. And I'm going to lose out on those because I don't have a family member willing to go into that meth house, to be blunt. And so we're going to miss out on a lot of those opportunities. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good feedback. And I think, you know, the way House Bill 3041 was and written, it is with the child being in the home. However, with that said, again, I think this is any pilot, right? We're hopefully going to learn about what works best for families and kids. And so, you know, I think, and to Anne's point, what she was saying about FFPSA and sort of how we envision in the future is that broaden the scope of who we're providing those services to include possibly, right, when we have a child outside the home being cared for by a relative and the parent is still in their own home.
Thank you.
Spot on. We have services for children. We don't have treatment services by and large for adults and the parents. So, you know, hopefully the current pilot will help educate policymakers on the value of services to the parent, such as substance abuse treatment and mental health, as well as the cadre of services right now we can offer children. So, but you're spot on. How do we treat the adult?
Yes.
That is one thing I had a question about. It's not incredibly clear on here how you determine which families go to family-based safety services versus getting this full sort of services and like very intensive support and help. And the candidacy definition feels very similar to the definition that for serving families through family-based safety services. So how are you deciding which families get the intensive support, in which are just referred to traditional family-based safety services, which doesn't have nearly this intense service array.
Yeah, so the investigator, as they're doing their investigation and they complete their risk and safety assessment, that is one way that they'll make the decision. This is a family that will benefit from this pilot, right? Just like any other given pilot, right? First and foremost, a child has to be safe in the home in order to even qualify for this pilot. So that's kind of their first, right? Do I have somebody that can secure safety for this child in this home as we work with the family to provide them services, right? So that's like the first criteria that we have to have. One, it has to be high or very high by the risk and safety assessment. And two, is the child safe? Do we have somebody that can provide safety for the child? And then they also have to assess, would this family benefit from court intervention, right? That's the next criteria, because not all families will benefit from that court intervention, or you just have families who don't need court intervention for, they're doing, sometimes they start working on their own before we even come to the table to say, we're going to go this route. They're already doing things, they're already engaged. And then the third criteria would be that we actually have to petition the court, and the court has to say, yes, this case does qualify. We've provided training, and so we'll petition the court, and the court will have to say, yes, risk is, the child is safe. We can provide, these type of services in the home. And so that will be the next criteria.
That's probably a very fine line that is being worked out because of these very new standards that are being imposed upon.
I have a question. So I heard you, maybe my math was good enough to realize that you said about 50 counties or so would be in the pilot program.
It's better. I didn't do the math as you were saying, but there is one region with 30 counties, so it is possible.
Okay. So looking forward, how frequently are you going to be collecting data, assessing data, reporting on data to assess the outcomes, and how long is the pilot program anticipated to last right now? Is this something that's been funded for 2 years, or is it a shorter timeline than that?
Good question. Sorry,
Linda.
I can answer.
Oh, okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Linda with To Engage, and we are the 30 county region that's planning to do this pilot. And it is a short time frame. It's only 12 months. And we are planning on launching that October 1st, as far as, the training for the whole community. And then we will start seeing families based on the court order services.
What about reporting?
We're planning on doing a monthly report, but we also have to where we have biweekly meetings with the department. So there's a whole team with investigation, FBSS, the regional director, myself, and then also the therapy, the therapists and the team. So there's a whole wraparound team that's involved in this process.
And I believe that there is I want to say that there's a university that's working with us to do the evaluation. It's a required evaluation.
Okay. Required, yeah.
It's coming back to me. Hold on a second. I have a lot to keep up in this head. But yes, we're working with the university to do the evaluation piece.
Sorry.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things I want to say, just as a judge that hears these cases every day, is we expected, now that we're like a year out from House Bill 67, we thought there'd be this large push. No longer would there be non-emergency removals. We would see all these cases now as court order services cases. And I can tell you, as a judge in the field, I don't really have any more court order services cases than I did prior to House Bill 567. So one of the things that I've seen, and I see it now in the affidavits, because we'll get an affidavit for an emergency removal, and it will now talk about a year's worth of, I'm going to say reasonable efforts, because that's what they're referring to it by, but it's really like waiting for someone to actually just trip the trap, like where there's actually some event that has now transpired where hands down, everybody in the room will agree that that child was in immediate danger. There was nothing that could be done about it, and they had to remove it. It basically was 0 to an exigent. Like the exigent is the new removal mechanism. And I don't want to see that. Like none of us want to see that. Like I now have more exigent removals than I had prior to House Bill 567. So there's this odd kind of barbell effect where we have, you know, court order services cases, and then we have these horrific cases on the back end. And what I wanted to see, and I had an expectation, was that a lot of our non-emergency removals would be shifted to court ordered services cases, because I can tell you, you know, as judges that hear these cases, most of these families are not agreeable to services, but that does not mean that we couldn't help the families and keep children safe. And so my big thing is, where's the big abyss of cases? I mean, they've gone somewhere, and as long as kids are safe, I'm fine with not seeing them. But I can tell you, I don't think that's true now that we're a year later, because I'm seeing these cases now come back finally as emergencies. And you track through the affidavit and you could find 1 to 3 prior times that you probably could have removed the children. And was it appropriate? Maybe it was not appropriate at the time, but when you see that in case after case, something's wrong. And I can tell you it is not the prosecutors, because the prosecutors are just waiting for cases to show up. They're not being staffed with. And I can say that because I have 5 counties and 3 CPS regions. It is consistent across all 3 of my regions. They say the exact same thing. Nobody comes to staff the cases with us. And when I get the affidavits, some of them are horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible.
Thank you for that feedback, Judge. You know, when we implement, when 567 came about, and we also changed the policy to FBSS, there was a big policy change as well. And we are reevaluating not just the policy, but the practice around the policy that really has impacted the families that we're serving, even on the FBSS side, which the families that were being captured before on the FBSS side were some of those court-ordered services, right? And I think that that was part of it, was that, you know, with 567, that we did expect to see an increase in court-ordered services. And you're right, we have not seen a large increase to kind of see that there was a big shift, if that makes sense. So what I can tell you is that we are in the process of just reevaluating the practice change in FBSS, because we are worried, in all transparency, that there might be some families out there that we're not capturing that we need to capture. And so we are working on that.
So
I can say you've got great investigators in some of my counties, and it's the same people. Like, they did a great job before the change. They're doing a great job now, but something, I mean, it has to be the policy, because they're the same people doing the same great work, but the cases just are not coming before us. And so I do not blame the staff that, like, I see on a day-to-day basis, because you have some great people.
But if we can add to that, we're also traveling around and listening to staff and their recommendations about how to change how we're handling FBSS and referrals too. And so we do see that there's some movement that we have to make, and we're in the process of doing that. We hear you, and we've heard it before.
I hate to interrupt this conversation because it's very fruitful, and we certainly need to discuss this further. I hope you all know that, you know, you always seem like you're on the hot seat, and nobody is in any way anything but appreciative for what you do. I say this every time, and I will say it every time, because it's so true that you're in a very, very challenging situation. I know that you really are doing the best you can, given very, very, very difficult situations. So know that we all appreciate it. I think this is a discussion that we need to continue to have, because as the legislature continues to, you know, kind of move the target, that we have to make sure that we are paying attention to that, and that we are reacting to that movement in a way that will make sure that children are continuing to be protected, as I know you understand. So I think I saw Sandra have one question, and just know that you're between us and lunch.
I guess I just was going to make a comment that
I think, yes, y'all are responding also to the new wording for 264203 on how you can even have participation in service. You know, I mean, before we kind of had broad authority, now we don't. And I really think that was the legislature that did that. And that component y'all can't change. So I don't blame the department workers for not being able to do it. They really are much more restricted now.
Yeah. Okay, with that, thank you all very, very much. And let's break for lunch. Thank you.
She can find me.
I'm on the.
Folks, back from lunch.
That's awesome.
I hope you enjoyed your lunch. I hope you were able to enjoy a piece of the delicious thank you cake for our outgoing commissioners and members. And what I'd like to do now is transition and invite Megan Lavoie, who I suspect you all know as the Administrative Director of OCA. We want to do two things. Welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here with us. Megan's just run over from something else, so we especially appreciate her being here today. And then I want to open the floor for you, Megan, to give us an update.
Settle for that warm welcome. Yes, I just came from Judicial Council, which y'all know is the policy-making body for the judiciary, and they made some legislative recommendations at their meeting this morning, and so I'll go over a couple of those. But first, I wanted to update you on just some internal OCA and our work with the Children's Commission. So we continue to work with the Commission and the Department of Family and Protective Services on the Early Intervention Court Liaison Project in Lubbock, Belton, and Galveston. Since the last Commission meeting, the third liaison, Rachel Faz, who is located in Lubbock County, began working with judges Kelly Tesh and Cara Darnell, and has been hired and has she's quickly begun her work. The three EICLs, is what we call them, continue to work on building and strengthening connections amongst community child welfare stakeholders, child protective services, and the courts in their respective jurisdictions. Also, OCA has been working with the Department of Family and Protective Services and the Children's Commission to develop a data agreement regarding the sharing of data between DFPS's impact system and OCA's CPCMS. From what I understand is that agreement hasn't made it to my desk yet, but it's with our general counsel and she's reviewing it now. In 2021, the commission awarded OCA a grant to fund a full-time senior data analyst who has been working with the commission with the primary objective to study the efficiency of virtual remote hearings in child abuse and neglect cases. Jeff Cox was hired for this position and we are nearing completion of that report. We're currently finalizing a draft that we will share with leadership at the commission before producing a final product. Also, Anissa Johnson, who y'all know with our office, has been working with the commission on planning the upcoming Child Welfare Conference that's going to be in Georgetown that I'm sure y'all talked about at this meeting on the 24th to the 26th. So we do have OCA staff that's going to be at that conference talking about issues such as travel, HR issues, court security, CPCMS, and we're going to have an update on what's going on with OCA as well. And then lastly, OCA has been working to identify which courts would best utilize the remaining funds from the Commission's technology grant to purchase equipment supporting hybrid hearings. As y'all probably remember, Judge Delia Gonzalez and Andrea James were the original courts to make use of that equipment. After surveying our CPC judges on their use of remote and in-person hearings, it was recommended that Judge Chris Cornish from Bell County and Cheryl Vaughn from Cook County receive the next set of equipment. And those items have been ordered, and once received, they'll be distributed and installed. So that's my internal OCA update for y'all. So I have a couple other things to update you on. Like I said, the Judicial Council met this morning. One of the things that the council was required to adopt was Senate Bill 560 from 2 sessions ago required the Judicial Council to start collecting data on representation in child protection cases. So we tasked TIDC with collecting and producing that report. It's called Court Appointed Legal Representation in Child Protection Cases. The report was adopted this morning by the council. The initial round of data in the report, so it should be online soon, shows substantial variation throughout the state in spending and disparities in CPS attorney availability across the state as well. Funding for this representation is provided, as you all know, solely at the local levels, and counties have requested a need for a state funding as this representation grows. The data in the report shows that counties are spending more than $60 million a year on CPS representation. So one of the recommendations that the council did make is that the legislature should establish a family protection legal representation program within the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, similar to the work that they're doing for criminal indigent defense. So those recommendations will be online. The report and the committee report will be online probably later this afternoon as well for y'all to take a look, but that was a big development. Some of the other recommendations that the council made relate to remote proceedings, bail, and they did make an interesting one about judicial work product security. So after the leak of the US Supreme Court opinion earlier this year, the Judicial Council looked at what were the relevant statutes at the federal level and also at the state level, and found that there wasn't anything directly on point. So they are recommending that the legislature make it a criminal offense to release draft judicial opinions or work product. So that was another recommendation from the council. And then just two other quick things. You know, we've been focusing on the court backlog across the state. We are seeing progress, specifically in jury trials. We do believe likely by the end of this year that jury trials are going to be back up to or close to pre-pandemic levels. So courts are getting back to work and having a lot of jury trials, but we did have a backlog summit that OCA sponsored along with the National Center for State Courts about 2 weeks ago. It was on September 14th and 15th, and we invited the top 20 jurisdictions that have the biggest backlog across the state to provide a day and a half of training in case flow management and docketing best practices. And so that was really successful, and we're hoping to have more events like that across the state and more training opportunities. And then finally, we are going to be embarking on our weighted caseload study next spring. The kickoff meeting for that study is, I think it's actually on Monday. I gotta look at my calendar, but I'm pretty sure it's on Monday. And so the study hasn't been done since 2007, and it's what is used by the legislature in creating new courts. So it's hasn't been revised since 2007, and obviously I think judicial duties have changed a lot since 2007. We obviously have remote hearings. I think judges have a lot of more administrative duties, and the time it takes to resolve specific case types has also changed significantly since 2007. So we are encouraging as many judges to participate in that because it requires, we're talking about doing it either in February or April, and it requires judges to keep track of their time over a 4-week period so we can give adequate weights to specific case types. But it is super important because it's what the legislature relies on in that data in creating new district courts. And then also in the study is going to be included, which was not included in the 2007 study, as county courts at law. So that's my brief update, and happy to answer any questions y'all have. And thanks for having me.
Questions, Megan, about OCA?
I have a compliment for OCA. So I had this trial involving a Vietnamese family, and we were really struggling with the interpreter, and someone took the initiative from the interpretation and translation office or program to call the coordinator in the middle of the trial and say, "Do you need help?" So anyway, we did get through it, but it really kind of opened our eyes to all the problems, you know, that there are with interpreters. I knew it was bad. I just didn't know it looked as bad to everybody else. So whoever that was, I hope, please thank them.
Yes, we have wonderful interpreters on staff that do fully remote interpretation. And I should mention that was actually another recommendation from the council to continue studying. You know, we want more data on who's using interpreters, what type of interpreters, and there's just not that data is not being collected. So that was one of the recommendations from the council to continue studying that issue to see how we can gather that information.
And so just as a follow-up to that, for the judges in the room who might find themselves in a similar situation, Does everyone know who to call? Whom should we call if we need, unexpectedly need an?
So we have 3 interpreters that are on staff, and our lead interpreter is, his name is Leo, and he is wonderful, and I can get y'all the email to contact or to reach out, but they are busy all the time. So every time we advertise their services, they obviously don't get mad, but they're like, we don't have enough interpreters to fill all the work that we have right now. And their work, especially since the
Is it a reservation system?
It is.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'd rather you not give that number out.
I know that's like all that we did a video right before the pandemic started and interviewed a couple of judges just about our remote interpretation services. And the judges did not want to talk to us. They're like, we don't want people to know that this is available because we don't want, to get denied because their schedule is too busy. So.
Okay, any other question?
I had a question, please, Justice. Megan, what languages do you all interpret?
Just do Spanish right now. We actually, we also have contract interpreters, but it's only so we have 3 full-time interpreters, and then we have 4 contract interpreters that we use for Operation Lone Star. And there are, that they provide as well.
Judge Ferguson.
That's a great question, and it dovetails into the access to justice connection of remote proceedings. We're seeing so much more diversity in every way. We have people zooming into hearings from other continents. We have so much broader participation. So even though I'm in an area that is English and Spanish almost exclusively, now I have people coming in with African dialects and Tagalog, and there are no interpreters because there are no residents who speak those languages. We really need, because of the impact on participation brought about by this revolution of remote proceedings, we need a source for these, I'm saying, less common languages in our areas, because when they come in, we end up using their son, or, and that's, as everyone knows, not ideal, let's just say, to have someone there having a conversation and then they turn and tell you what they want you to hear. I know that's a massive ask, but that is something we all seem to need no matter where we are.
I agree with you. I will also say that the cost is very expensive. When we were looking to bring more interpreters on, so y'all might not know, but we, visiting judges are doing all the magistrations for Operation Lone Star cases, and our office staffs all of those remote hearings. And so we have administrative assistants that help them with their dockets and then getting the paperwork to the appropriate clerk's offices, because there's so many that are involved. And then we also provide the interpretation services as well. And we had postings for several months and couldn't find any because they make so much money doing contract work. And so that's how we had to bring them on. And so it's very expensive. And then if you speak a language that is not prominent, the rate even goes up even further. So we have, I think, someone from Washington State that's providing some services for us because they speak one of those indigenous languages. But it's definitely an issue, I think, that we're going to continue to have conversations about going forward. I was looking for that. I know that there's an email that y'all can reach out to. I'll get that to Jamie. And I apologize, I don't know it off the top of my head, that you can reach out. But the lead interpreter is
It's interpreter at TX course.
There you go. I was gonna say it was that, but I knew if I gave out the wrong address, my staff would.
That's what it is.
We have like probably 100 different email like that, like public affairs or executive. And so I wanted to make sure I didn't get it right. So thank you, Judge Hoffman.
Off my Christmas card list, Judge.
Interpreter at txcourt.gov. And if you can't read, you can always email me and I will get you to the right person too.
Thank you, Megan. So question from Judge Alvarado.
So with our court reporter shortage, are you all working on a swing court reporter program like that too for the courts?
Yes, no, we're not working. I want to clarify, we're not working on a separate court reporter program, but I know that that is an issue and there have been many discussions about how to deal with that. And there are people working on it. And I think having stakeholder sessions with the court reporters and their representation and judges and coordinators would be helpful.
I'm glad that Judge Alvarado mentioned that. In our regional meeting at the conference, Judge Abels indicated that we're going to be able to use visiting judge money for visiting court reporters, perhaps.
So we have ARPA funding, but it's the judiciary was awarded $7 million in ARPA funding, but that funding has been distributed to the counties already. So there's 12 jurisdictions that are receiving that funding. We got $26 million in requests from, we focused on the top 20 jurisdictions that had the biggest backlog at the felony level. And we got $26 million in requests and we have $7 million to provide. But I think we'll have to see how successful this is because I do think that there would have to be a statutory change to expand funding, who that can go to. And increase too. But I think if we can show that this is successful, because that was the need that we got was for court staff or court reporters or a prosecutor so that they could set up the auxiliary court and then have they could use the regular visiting judge appropriation, or a lot of counties got their they can use that funding to pay for visiting judges. So most of that, the ARPA funding is being used for court staff and not for visiting judges because they're using just the regular pot of money for visiting judges. But I do think that issue has been discussed about expanding who that money can go to. I think if there's adequate funding there, that could be a solution. But even just finding court reporters, that's I mean, that's what, or there, I've heard a lot of discussions about, court reporters being stolen for, and they went to a larger jurisdiction, they're paying them, $50,000. That's also happening at the court coordinator level too. So something we have to keep watching.
This is a problem in many places in the world, even outside courts. Okay, any other questions or comments for Megan? Thank you very much, Megan, for your update and for being an important partner of the Children's Commission. Okay, we've reserved some time here to talk about challenges and successes that we are seeing in our daily work. And before the lunch break, we were in a very good, I think, very fruitful discussion about some of the urgent challenges we're seeing and urgent trends and different trends that we're seeing as a result of some new legislation. And so I want to open the floor to either going back to those topics, because I know there were some questions before we broke for lunch, and we just were trying to stay on track. But we'll come back to those topics, or if someone has a recent challenge or success they'd like to share, then this is your moment, and we'd love to hear from you.
So can I just, it's kind of on par with that, but it's actually a question I'm going to throw to Dylan as to data collection specifically. And I understand that Mr. Cox, I think is who you had mentioned, Jeff Cox had indicated that there's a study that they're doing with respect to this specific issue. But what I'd like to know is in those numbers, or perhaps in a future data study in those numbers, are we going to see what I think would be a natural pairing, and is injury, like, is there going to be an uptick in injury outcomes with respect to the children? And are we going to have data that we can parallel to that? So my understanding is he's got something he's going to be presenting at the Child Welfare Conference, but I'm just curious, does that data set have that information in it already, or is it something that down the line could be an added component?
So just to be clear, we're talking about data, what data collection is happening around 576? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Judge Alvarado. What I'll say is the data we've been working on, we have sort of two main sets of data. It's CPCMS data and DFPS impact data. And they tell us a little bit different things. The study that Jeff is working on is mostly focused on CPCMS data, which I think the data that have in there regarding severity is probably data that is probably from the DFPS impact system. I'm not sure that it's new data. But Jeff, I don't know if you can speak to that.
Regarding priority of cases in there, but that's something that we want to look at further. We do see number of cases filing decline, and basically court-ordered services have remained low. So a recommendation to discerning, are these higher priority cases would be to look at the pre and post implementation of the bill and look at, what the prioritization of those cases were by DFPS as a proxy for the severity.
That answer your question, Judge Alvarado?
Yes, I'm just curious to know if at a later date, then are we going to have another component that is perhaps added to that, which would be kind of more outcome derivative of, whether or not we would be able to track, like, was there an increase then in serious injury? So we see that there's a decrease in filing on one side, but what's kind of like the trickle down effect then? Is there an outcome on the other side that we're also seeing an increase in more serious injury cases as well? That's the question that I have. And if we're able to collect data at a later point in time, is that something that we're able to do through the commission to track that information?
Well, so we don't have any efforts to collect independent data. We'd be looking at probably data from DFPS. As far as data as to what the outcome from cases that maybe didn't result in removal and what those long-term consequences are, I think the challenge right now is that data is probably 6 to probably 12 months away from existing, because we don't quite know what the consequences of that has been. So we're still sort of waiting for the data that'll tell us kind of the year follow-up to the last legislative session. And I think it'll be probably another 6 to 12 months before we have the data sort of the after effects of those cases. So I think it exists, but we don't have it quite yet.
Can I jump in on that to say that this was a priority of the data committee for the coming year, and they do want to continue to look at all available data sources and have a concerted effort around keeping an eye on what the data is telling us on this exact issue.
And when do you expect to have a report? So when is the right time to sort of analyze, or is it happening periodically, or
so I think
is there any of it that's available?
DFPS's data is not publicly available yet, I think, for the fiscal year, the full year for the past legislative session. I don't think it's on the DFPS data book yet. I think it'll come alive probably February, is what I've been told to expect. Generally historically correct. So it'll be a little while before we have the publicly available data from the year after the legislative session.
Part of the
I think we don't have something planned yet, but I think once we analyze those trends and we feel like we've identified something, I think that's something the data committee can absolutely consider.
Other.
Are you going to track the number of prior referrals before the actual removal?
That's probably a good question for DFPS. I don't think.
I think the judges here would like to know that, right? If there've been a lot of prior referrals, but then this was the removal.
Excellent question. I would go to DFPS is that something to have the ability to report on.
So currently, what we track is the recidivism, which is a year after.
Just a little bit.
Yes, sorry. So what I was saying was that currently what we track is the recidivism, right? Which is a year after we close a case. And what you're asking is, are we going to track? Are we going to track when we remove a child, how many prior referrals did we have on that family? We don't have anything in our, so we have a data warehouse, right, where we can look at different reports by years. And to my knowledge, we don't have a report specifically built that I could go pull today and be like, we removed on Commissioner Masters today and she had 10 other referrals behind that. Not that I'm aware of.
We can have Corliss follow up. She's over our data team and she can have that capability.
So what I'm sorry?
It would just be in the case.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can look at somebody's history individually. Like if I go in, I can pull up a case and be like, oh, they have 5, 6 referrals prior to the subcare stage. But we don't, at least to my knowledge, we don't have a data warehouse report right now that I can just go in and pull it and be like, oh, this family was involved with us. You know, in this unit, we served 50 families, and out of those, when we removed out of those families, they had 10 prior referrals. We don't, at least not to my knowledge, but Corliss, maybe follow up on that.
My follow-up question to that is then how difficult is it to implement something like that, a tracking mechanism, so that can start at a specific point in time in the year, and we know from that point in time forward, we're able to track that data. Because it would be very beneficial to us, and I think it would also be very helpful if, you know, we need to go back to the legislature on this issue, and it'd be great comparative data for them to utilize in their committees.
Yeah, Corliss will get back.
Judge Alvarado, one thing that also comes to mind is it's not really data tracking for going forward, but a way to try to assess the issue retrospectively is to do a case file review where you go back and look in the case files and try to get a sense of what happened before that. But you obviously have to have the cases come to fruition before you can go back and do a case file review. But I think that's something the data committee can really discuss as a project, as to whether or not we want to do sort of a more in-depth study like that might be a case file examination.
And I'm not saying that we've done that on every case in Bexar County, but we've had some samplings that we've done with our administration, kind of like what the cases that you were pointing out. And we were able to backtrack to show where there was prior referrals, and then this child came through the emergency room, and then that's where it was triggered. So I would just like to see if we can follow that. I anticipate what we're going to see is maybe it's going to be a decrease in filings, but we may see an uptick in serious injuries and death cases. And that's what I would like to have that background data on.
So kind of to follow up on that and from the conversation before lunch, I think we have a confusing standard, and it's difficult for judges perhaps across the state to apply. You know, it may result in a training issue like Judge Ferguson was talking about earlier, but I do know that there are jurisdictions, and of course we're talking about this at lunch, Justice Settle, where judges are routinely returning children who are testing positive for methamphetamines at birth. They're returning those children and closing cases. So the department, I think, is getting mixed messages from across the state. And I think that's something, you know, I don't know if we need to have a roundtable. Here you go, Jocelyn.
Amy.
We know the legislature has given us legislation to work with, but it is difficult, especially when you're having different results across the state. One of the things that I wanted to talk about from this morning as well was Sarah said that if the case wasn't a SAPSR, then CASA couldn't be appointed. We talked about this a couple of years ago. Judge Rucker and I, for some reason, the issue came up. Our court-ordered services case is SAPSERS, and we kicked it back and forth. You remember, Jamie, and we came down with the determination that they are not, but I don't think that there's any legislation that I don't think the code tells us that they are or not necessarily, but it may be that, that we want to think about requesting that the legislature makes court-ordered service cases SAPSERS, and that would give us the ability to resolve the issue that we're talking about on this end of the table with, at the end of that court-ordered services case, grandma could be appointed as a conservator. It would trigger more notice issues, of course. We know it would cause more work for lots of folks, but it might be something that we want to think about, just determining that those are SAPSERS that would solve the problem of CASA, the guardian ad litem. And that's just, I put it out there as food for thought. Y'all can mull that over. If you have an opinion strongly one way or another, email Jamie, email us, and we'll think about it.
In Travis County, they do file their court-ordered services cases as suits affecting the parent-child relationship, and there are a couple other jurisdictions that do as well. But generally, it's motions to participate. And I think from our perspective, we're getting involved much earlier in cases already, trying to do family finding and family engagement, and a lot of work around wrapping support around parents and children. And we really want to bring those services and supports to bear in court-ordered services cases as well.
It seems to me like that we're going in that you're talking about right now, it seems like they should be SAPSERS, or we should head in that direction. But there may be a lot of good reasons that they're not. And that's what I would ask folks to give us feedback on.
Yes, were we about to say the same thing? Because we just had this discussion about the temporary orders.
Yeah, so under 105, you can, I guess under the court services statute, you can have other temporary orders under chapter 105. And so I don't think it's a big stretch to say, legislature just allow us to finalize the very orders that we already have in the case on a temporary basis, because right now those temporary orders would just expire. But we've been talking about, what do you do with paternity? Because it says, oh, you could do child support. We came up with categories of things that could be ordered in a court service case, but
well, if that's what they're doing in some jurisdictions, it may not even require legislative action. It may just be a training issue.
I think in Travis County, I think they're filing an alternative.
Yeah,
like
in
it's
the
a
alternative.
removal. If it's not a removal, it's court of services. I think it's kind of a cascade down. So if you set a freestanding case, and I'll say as an associate judge, I mean, we have to look at what our referral orders say too, because the department must be involved. It's the department's involved and we're there. But if you just said, okay, no, it's just gonna be the parents and maybe the grandparents, then I'm not there. It's not my courtroom anymore. So, I mean, I think you kind of have to make sure that CPS is involved in the process in order to at least push it through the CPC courts.
Is that an issue that is meritorious enough that we need to investigate? Would that solve a lot of problems, perhaps?
I think if we're going to direct a lot of the cases away from removals, which I think is the right thing to do. I mean, I think it's very hard to say we think we did the best we could do for your family in this 90-day period. Good luck after that. I mean, what we really need is final orders. So, I mean, I think it's worth.
I think the legislature would solve the issue, because the downside to doing the SAPSERS that my attorneys are doing is then these folks are on their own. And as we know, they're not going to have the resources that DFPS has.
Well, the department would be a party in the court-ordered service case.
But some of them are not involved once it's a standalone SAPSER.
Well, I think
so. The legislation, I think, would be just off the cuff, just thinking about it. I think it would be a good deal, because then we could move into that and still have the benefit of those resources.
I think our position is, we want to be able to support children staying with their parents, however that's possible, however it's filed. So I don't know. I do wonder from a parent's perspective, does it feel different? Does a motion to participate feel different than a suit affecting the parent-child relationship? And I don't know the answer to that, but it does feel like one is much more adversarial than the other potentially. And so I think that's one issue that we've heard in Travis County is that the perception that parents have about the type of involvement that the court has when it's filed in that way. And I just want to put that out there as something to think about as we, go down this road. I think we want to be able to be appointed however it's filed as an optional appointment if it makes sense and the judge feels it's appropriate for best interest representation or to provide that family finding and support. But we have heard some, I think, feedback from parents in Travis County about the adversarial nature of it being filed in that way. And that feels different than a motion to participate, I think. But now that it's much more streamlined in 567, they outline very clearly it's much different now than it was. So I don't know the answer to that, but I just want to put that out there.
Can I say something? I practiced in Travis County for almost 20 years. And yeah, everything is filed as a SAPSR, and I've represented hundreds and hundreds of parents. And I can just say I've also practiced in some of the smaller counties that don't engage in the SAPSR petitions. And I haven't found a huge, vocal outcry by the parents about the adversarial nature. I just haven't experienced that. I think if we're looking at protecting the children, the most important thing to do is to focus on the children. And if the parents are, a little bit upset about the fact that a SAPSR is being filed and not a motion to participate, that shouldn't be our focus, in my opinion. And I'm speaking as someone who's represented a lot of parents, so in these cases, and I think that it's critical. We always have attorneys ad litem and guardians ad litem appointed in Travis County for every single case that's filed, every COS case, and the affidavit lays out whether or not they want to remove the child. Sometimes judges will listen and think, oh, we need to remove this child, even though the department maybe doesn't think a removal is necessary. And then it becomes a TMC case. But I think it's a great blueprint be very interested in participating in a roundtable with the Travis County judges, Aurora Martinez-Jones and Lee Matthews Rodriguez about that, because I think it's a very successful program and it's been going on for a long time in Travis. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Wonderful. Maybe there are some things we can learn from that program. And what I've just leaned over and mentioned to Jamie is I think that this topic just in general is one we should probably come back to in our next meeting in February. We may, by February, have maybe some of the public data that you've been gathering and looking at. So anything else before we leave that topic? I want to leave time for a couple of collaborative council announcements. But the one thing I would hold off for is if someone has a good success they'd like to share before I do that.
I'll just say I'm just excited. This is our first year we're actually gonna be back for National Adoption Day in person, and it's gonna be all the big festivities. And so I know I've got several cases that have been holding off on adoption that we're gonna finally get to close out. And so last year we did a very low-key hybrid event. So anyway, I'm just excited that we're gonna be back to what we were several years ago. And it's going to be a day where everybody's going to be crying at happy tears. So I'm just happy that we're heading back that direction.
Wonderful. When is it?
So it's the Saturday before Thanksgiving. And they bring in, people that do balloon animals and face painting and superheroes. And I mean, it's a massive event. And so it's been kind of sad the past couple of years. It's been happy, but sad that it hasn't been the celebration. So anyway, we're excited to get back to it.
Wonderful. We'll look forward to that. Thank you. And finally, what I want to do is move to a couple of, as I say, member updates from the Collaborative Council. Well, I have two. And first, I want to recognize Tiffany Bartlett.
Thank you.
We should have kept you standing.
And so I know some of you for many years, and I've just joined Texas Lawyers for Children, working with Barbara Elias Percival in addition to my private practice. So Barbara just wanted me to make a brief announcement about just reminding all of you about the trauma training, the online 15 hours of free trauma training that's available. Over 1,000 judges and attorneys at this point in 215 different counties across the state have enjoyed the 15 hours of trauma training. It is quite a remarkable program, and just would really like to encourage everybody to go to texaslawyersforchildren.org and register for that. It also satisfies the requirements of 107-004 B4 for training for attorneys ad litem in the trauma training. And you know, it's so important to talk about the overuse of psychotropic medications for our children in foster care, and looking for alternative ways to help these children, and the critical importance of trauma training in addition to child welfare legal professionals. Also, we're trying to get the pediatricians, the Texas Pediatric Society, to engage in agreeing to trauma training for pediatricians, and also any mental health professionals who work with children. So we really, we've gotten some amazingly positive feedback from everybody who's participated in the trauma training. And we'd love for all of you, if you haven't engaged, and I know it's a lot of time, but you know, you don't have to do the whole 15 hours, but we would just encourage you to do that. And we look forward to future collaborations like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Next up, Barbara Grimmer with CPS Council on Family Violence.
Yes, hi. Some of you may know that tomorrow begins October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're doing a lot of different things for that month, but the thing I want to announce today is that we have our town hall on next Thursday, October 6th. It's virtual. Everyone in Texas is invited. We really want to open it up to all stakeholders, all community members, parents, families. Our theme this year is Join the Team, We're Safer Together. Every year, the Texas Council on Family Violence collects narratives, police reports, and stats on all of the intimate partner homicides that happened in the previous year. So at the town hall, we'll be announcing the 2021 numbers. I encourage all of you to reach out to your local domestic violence programs in your jurisdictions, because they're probably planning events as well. And my primary role at TCFV is to connect child welfare staff and their family violence program in their communities, because we know that family violence exists in a lot of our CPS cases. So if you have any questions or want to connect with your family violence program and don't know where to start, I'd be happy to direct you. So you can always email me. And that's all I have. And I can also tell you about our other things going on for DVAM if you reach out to. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm now to the point where I ask, does anyone have new business they need to raise? Okay, with that, I'll let you know the next time we are coming together. Our final meeting of 2022 is November 4th. November 4th, this will be held remotely, so it will be an all Zoom meeting on November 4th. We've set our 2023 meeting dates all on Fridays, and there will be 4 of them, of course. February will be in person on February 10th. May 12th will be virtual. September 15th will be in person again. And then November 3rd will be virtual. Those are all in 2023, and those dates are in your notebook packet if you didn't quite get them on your calendar just then. They'll also be shared with you in a forthcoming email. So thank you very much for your engagement and involvement today, for your precious time. I wish you all safe travels. You have my gratitude for doing this important work. We're adjourned.